Hello, friends, and welcome back to NOCLIP'S Games of 2024. We're back. It's part 2 of 4, kind of 5. Once we get around to our community podcast. If you are listening to this as the first Game of the Year podcast you're listening to on NOCLIP'S Game of the Year, hit pause, go back. We already picked our top 10 games of the year, but that's not why we're here today. We're not going to order these. What are we? Idiot Luddite journalists? No, we're a bunch of gaming-loving weirdos who are scared of getting into arguments over what game's better. We already did that. That's in the past. Now we just get to celebrate the 10 games that we enjoyed the most in 2024 by dividing them up into 3 podcasts wherein we take a little time to just remember the great things that we enjoyed about those games. As you probably know from the title of this podcast and the thumbnail, the 4 games that we're going to talk about on today's podcast are Balatro, Astro Bot, UFO 50, and Mouthwashing. And to talk about those games are some guys who've been washing their mouths all morning in preparation for this podcast. Jeremy Jane, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Also, the idea of comparing Astro Bot to Mouthwashing is very funny to me. Like, if we had to rank them, that conversation would be very, very apples to oranges.
Maybe we should be ranking these. Maybe is that what you're telling me?
I think we need to. I want to debate why Mouthwashing is comparable not only to Astro Bot but superior.
Oh my God, Frank! How often do you wash your mouth?
2 times a day. Well, one in the morning, one at night, as per dentist's instruction, and then I carry around like a little toothpick thing. And,
wow!
Double check it.
He was ready. Damn.
He had it in his hand.
I fidget. I'm a fidgeter, Jerry. What do you want?
Jerry.
Jesse Garasha, what do you think on our top 10 games are the polar opposites? If you were to look at the 10 games that we have, what would you say are the 2 that are the furthest away? Mouthwashing and Astro Bot are far, but I think we can do better.
It's got to be like Balatro and 1,000 Times Resist. Or no, Balatro and Anthology of the Killer.
It's a good point. Balatro is sort of in its own little weird... It's like the only game where you don't play as a dude. You know what I mean? Like as a human.
That's true. Right? Who is the protagonist of Balatro? Who's behind the camera?
Who's the antagonist of Balatro? Is it the fucking clown?
The player is both.
Yeah.
You're right. You're doing it to yourself. It's self-harm.
Self-inflicted, yeah.
Hey, these are all good because the whole point of this podcast is not only do we celebrate these games, but we give them their very own awards. And those awards are bespoke and named by us, and they are almost entirely bad puns that we will come to regret. So I'm putting self-harm... Best self-harm game.
I'm just going to burn this one now because it won't end up being the pick. But last night I was laying in bed and I was thinking about this podcast, not pre-planning it, but just being like, oh yeah, that's tomorrow. Sure, and I was like, Balatro. And as I fell asleep, I was like, safest heroine. And I was like, no, that's not going to win. But
that would be good if like you played as a lady hero.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have we done that before? Did we do that with Horizon or something?
No.
I don't think so.
No, I don't think. Okay.
That's good though.
Exactly. I think we might have done something methadone before, though. We've definitely drifted into the world of narcotics a number of times.
This doesn't surprise me at all.
No, it doesn't at all. The 10 games, in case you do want them spoiled, or you just need a reminder, our top 10 in no particular order are Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, really fucking squeezing in. Hey, people liked it. People liked it. Critics liked it. I think players are enjoying it. I didn't know. I thought maybe I was crazy, but it turns out we're all crazy if we are. Mouthwashing, Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth, Anthology of the Killer, Astro Bot, Balatro, UFO 50, Metaphori Fantasio, and 1000X Resist. Am I saying that? Is that the way we're saying it? Or do we say cross resist?
1,000 times.
I don't think it's that big of a deal.
1,000 times resist. Okay, I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
God, there's no point in the game where they go and 1,000 times.
What are we? Some kind of 1,000 times resist? They never say anything.
They don't like
that.
Look at the.
They don't suicide
lens
squad it
or anything. Yeah, they don't. Okay, that's a shame. Man, there's literally like 7 different ways you can interpret the name of that game. That is, I never even would have said 1,000 times.
I never would have too until Jesse mentioned it. After playing the game, I'm like, oh, that's
like, oh, okay, I get why it would be.
Yeah,
gotcha.
Resist 1,000 times.
It's a
1,000 times.
better name. 1,000 times resist is a good sounding name. Then it's better than 1,000x resist. Whatever, doesn't matter. Anyway, we're not here to say which game has the worst name. Which I think that one does, but
Hey, Great Circle.
The Great Circle. You got to look. If you like the game, that's fine.
Don't be
Let's
throwing
stop
stones in
defending
this glass house,
Yeah.
Indiana.
It sounds better in German.
Die große.
Wait, don't you speak German, Jeremy, a little bit?
Yeah, ein bisschen. I don't know what circle is though.
Excuse me, what did you call me?
Ein bisschen.
I'm Bitchin.
But you're
Like a
Bitchin.
Dragon Infinite Wealth is probably the best named one. Although it has almost nothing to do with the game. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm partial to Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. It's a good
That's
name.
good. I like Metaphor
Yes.
ReFantasio because it tells me nothing about the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And we actually have a new Battle Pass holder this week who has a name not unlike Metaphori Fantasio. Shout out to all of our incredible Battle Pass holders. It's a me, Ferrario, who also is... This is going to make the whole title sponsor thing with Shift F1 even more confusing because It's a Me Ferrario, perhaps even more appropriately, is a title sponsor on Shift F1. So now we are crossing the streams. Penelope Hayes, Senator Armstrong, sir, Eamon Slattery, Harry Flanagan, Arno, Richard Matheson, James Brown, Mark Rojas, Tucker Morgan, David McGarry, Sven Hooster, Pez, Aaron L. White, Ewit Nate, Tim Robinson, Forrest Pruitt, Jonathan Kremen, Eric Hamilton Schneider, Cameron Laird, Zachary Snyder, Alex Sharp, Alex Goucher, George Sakotis, Jacob Godserve, Tohir Tiliev, and Ryson. Thank you very much for supporting the work we do at NoClip, along with the thousands of other awesome patrons and members at patreon.com/NoClip. You can join up for free, and if you do so, you can add your favorite games of 2024 to our community list, which will be closing in about a week's time. Actually, I think by the time, is it a week from today? I think this will go up on the 13th.
13th, right? Yeah.
We're closing it on the 20th, are we?
Oh,
Or are
okay.
we closing on the 13th?
We can go 20th, yeah. Or wait, when are we recording the episode? On the 18th?
That's a good point. Okay, let's
We're keeping it open until
you know
after.
what? Let's close it on the Monday. So you have, as of you're listening to this right now on the 13th of December, you have the weekend to do it. You really have today to do it. So just go do it today, because who knows, we might just shut it off on a Saturday. Tough.
Stop the steal.
That's not what I said, but wait, are we saying
You said end the vote, and I just
Yeah,
imagined
end the
someone
Stop the
was,
count.
stop
Yeah.
the
Stop
steal?
the count.
like their game
are
was
they-
ahead, and they
Is
were.
there going to be a Democratic January 6th? Is that what is that going to become like a new like tradition that like
every January 6th. Well, this time
Yeah.
it's January 20th. Just every January we'll have a little coup. Just a little coup.
just a little
I think
one.
that'd be. It's kind of like it's like a tower defense game that every year the the Capitol has to like set up all their shit the right way and be like, nah, no way you're getting in this year, motherfuckers. Oh no, they're peeing on someone's desk.
Dude, the
Oops,
preparation
send them to
phase is
jail.
like 4 years. That's wild. They have so long to get ready for it.
That was my favorite UFO 50 game. Was it was called January 64.
That's good.
Wow, shit. Oh my god, now I want to play that game.
Me too.
We're going to talk about some video games. Let's do these in the order they came out, because I found this very funny that 3 of these games came out in September. It was a pretty great month, apparently, for video games. The one that did not, though, was an early hit this year. We had a little podcast about it as well. Balatro came out on February 20th, developed by Local Thunk, a gentleman who had never made a commercial video game prior to this. He'd made some games for his buddies. Interesting dude. You can go check out our podcast, like I said, on this feed. It's a roguelike card poker game. It's based on a Cantonese game called, is it Big Five, I believe it's called.
That sounds right.
It might be Big Six. I think it's Big Five. Which is a sort of a game that uses poker hands, but you play it one-on-one or in individual ways. He was trying to make a multiplayer version of this to play with his friends, and the whole thing kind of spun out of control. He is responsible for everything except the music, but the music he also had a bit of a hand in. He drew all the art and did all the programming and everything else, all the animation, and it has taken the world by storm. It's out on practically everything you can play games on, including handheld devices. It has now since come out on mobile as well. Balatro, whatever you call it. It's a pretty special game and certainly one of the best of 2024. Who wants to take the lead on Balatro? I feel like of all the games, this is maybe the one that I am the most into. Is that the case? Or
I think Jesse is the Balatro
let
king
me
here.
set
That's
the
true,
record
that's true.
straight on this for
Yeah.
a second, all right? In the last podcast, look, Jeremy and I have been somewhat negative towards Balatro. I have 500 hours in this game on Steam, all right? I fucking love Balatro. I think this is one of the greatest games ever made. I think this is our generation's Tetris. It's so much fun. Like,
whoa.
I totally, fully, personally believe that this is our generation's Tetris. It is like fun on every platform you play it on. It is strategic in a lot of ways. It is like so easy to pick up, accessible, and straightforward to people who don't even play video games. It has layers to it that are obvious. I think the reason I, at this point, am somewhat negative towards the game is twofold. One, I can see the dark patterns of it, but it's not a frustration with Balatro. It's a frustration with games in general, especially on mobile, where Balatro is now, that use the similar tactics to do things that are messed up. Like, that's not necessarily a critique of Balatro.
I'd love to elaborate on this, because I think I kind of have a bit of a different perspective than you and Jeremy on this one in particularly. So let's get it out of the way before we celebrate what's good about this game.
Yeah, I think like the way that Balatro is designed is not, and this is a similar thing to Vampire Survivors, is not necessarily something that makes it bad on its own. Like, to make a game that is fun and enthralling and addictive in a lot of ways, using the same sort of dopamine systems that we see of like big flashing lights, making the numbers go up, the sound effects rising as time goes on. I went to the casino and like actually gambled for the first time a couple of weeks ago. And I felt myself feeling the same way that I did playing Balatro as I did at those tables. But of course, the incentive there is for me to spend money, where here it's just to have fun. It's okay. And as someone who got so many hours, I mean, I was getting the hardest achievements in this game, one of them including winning a game of Balatro with no jokers, which is really hard to do. I felt myself in those moments doing the casino slot machine thing of just pressing the button over and over again, waiting for the random number generator to give me what I wanted so I could get the win to the end. Again, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with using those systems to make fun for the player. Like, it's just the way we've designed games. And sometimes that's to extract resources from the player. Sometimes that's money. And sometimes it's just fun. You know, when you detach, if a casino games
so
are games.
what's the criticism then? If that's the case, and you're saying Balatro's not doing it to extract anything.
I'm being clear that like this is not a critic, and I said it when I started saying this, that like Balatro, I'm not criticizing it. I'm criticizing, now that I've come to think about my position on it, I'm criticizing the industry around Balatro and how I think for some players they'll be introduced to Balatro, and this again, not Local Thunk's fault or PlayStack's fault. I think what Balatro does successfully will likely be, and is already, be used in ways that extract money and time from people in unhealthy ways. If they like Balatro and they go to play another mobile game that does something similar, it's potentially a gateway in some ways. That is not a criticism of Balatro. That is a criticism of the way that those systems can be exploited.
All right, Jeremy, is that where you're coming from as well, Jeremy, on this?
I have way less time in Balatro than Jesse. I have probably less than 20 hours. I did feel like it was very addictive, but I also get that way with a lot of different games, especially like it's part of the reason that I have over the years gravitated towards more, I guess, like narrative driven games that have a hard endpoint. Cause it's like, I have like I go into like a mania when I really love a game and I just play it nonstop. And then I hit a point where it's like either the story ends or there's no end to it. And I'm like, holy shit, I need to get off of this for a minute. I feel like Balatro, I had the point where I don't know. I mean, I had like a honeymoon period where I adored it. I think it's a fantastic game. I guess the crossover with Jesse's point where I agree is that it did feel after about 20 hours of playing the game that it was like I like, Jesse, are you specifically talking about the fact that like between rounds you're just basically like opening sort of like Airsot's gacha packs and just sort of like playing into randomness?
The RNG aspects of it. Again, I have so many hours of it. If you see somebody playing like or leaving a negative review on a game where they have 2,000 hours, it's because they stopped seeing the aesthetic parts of it and start to see the random number generators. In this case with Balatro, with me, I was like, I stopped seeing the joyful strategy of it and started seeing, even when things work out, when you have a losing hand, it's because you just didn't get the right jokers. You didn't get something in the right order, right? At a certain point. At earlier stakes, it's easier to continue to just play and have fun. And maybe you'll make it to the end if you plan your hands properly and you play around with the strategies. But at a certain point of difficulty, you're just waiting for the things to pop up.
That is interesting. Yeah, because the things that I really do like about Balatro are I have been playing poker since I was a kid. I love poker. I played poker as a kid with friends for no money, just because it's like a fun, interesting game with fun, interesting strategies and stuff. So the thing I really do like about Balatro is that it's it's like a one-player poker game that is fun and engaging, and I adore that about that. But I do see eye to eye with you on the fact that it's like, at some point it kind of, because like the roguelikes have that inherently. There's the feeling that you boot up a roguelike, you're like, this is the run, baby. Like, here comes the fucking build that I need to get all the way. Like Isaac has that, like every fucking roguelike has that. And that is part of the fun of the genre that I really enjoy. I think where it ran out of steam for me with Balatro is that in Isaac, if you have a shitty build, there's still sort of like an amount of maneuvering and running around and dodging and whatever that you can do to overcome the build. It does feel like in Balatro, a lot of time you're just waiting for the chips to fall and seeing what the build is and seeing if it's good enough. And yeah, I did feel at some point that there was like a little bit of a lack of agency. But I also, maybe because I have, like a 5% as much time playing Balatro as you, I think I'm probably a little less negative on it, but I definitely at some point was like, I'm just like fiending, and I'm not really having like the honeymoon period is over or whatever.
Yeah, to be clear, I'm not coming into this conversation trying to be negative about Balatro. I was just trying to get out of the way a perspective that I've only sort of touched on in previous podcast episodes. I think Balatro, again, is one of the best games, not of just this year, but potentially of the last decade for me. I have fun playing it still, and I think about it. I watch Cassie play it on her phone, and I'm like, I could see the strategies. The way that Balatro is designed and the way that it opens up to the player is better maybe than any other roguelike I've played in the last year, if not the last couple, where you can see the strategies opening up over time. You unlock cards with this cadence that reveals to you strategies. Everything can be strategized around, whether that's accumulating money or designing a certain hand to show up more frequently in your deck by manipulating the cards in it. Balatro's success to me is that cheating is incredibly fun. It turns out stacking the deck in your favor is a blast. Sometimes that's literally stacking the deck, and sometimes it's these ethereal, magical jokers that show up and change every little variable on the screen and make things matter that previously in your first 10 hours of playing, after 100 hours, might become like, whoa, like I didn't realize that was a way you could play the game. It encourages this creativity in its design that I think most roguelikes aren't not capable of achieving, but end up like pushing themselves into a corner because of the way they're designed, whether that's visually or, as Local Thunk mentioned in the Dear Dwyery episode, sometimes that's just in the way that they present the mechanics. Like, Balatro is not a combat card game. Balatro is a game where you're just trying to maximize a score. So it's more like an arcade game, where in something like Slay the Spire, you have a challenge you have to overcome that is not exclusively like one-to-one getting a score to a certain point. There it's like managing your armor, making sure you don't lose health and stuff, right? So it's a much more boiled down version of it that can also add layers onto it. You can see if you check different versions of the demo for Balatro as time went on with YouTubers, that Local Thunk built on systems, removed systems, iterated on it in this way that if it was more rigid in its design, if it had a bigger structure, a map, something to follow, a routes like in Slay the Spire, that would get in the way of the ability to build on these mechanics. Maybe it wouldn't, but it would have taken longer. It would have been a different game. I think Balatro succeeds in so many ways that clearly people who don't even play video games can observe and have fun with. Just poker. It turns out, actually, casinos are lit when there's no money attached to them. If we could just go and play poker with our friends for fun, it would actually be a good time.
Poker night at the infantry, guys. It's been there the whole time. There's two of them.
Yeah, well,
great.
If there was fun floating magical jokers, I might have played it.
Yeah, cool. No, thanks. I just wanted to I feel like there are some sort of superficial criticisms of this stuff that kind of like what we talked about before last week with the praising or not praising a game based on how it makes you feel. I similarly think that not only is there a degree of personal responsibility when it comes to this sort of stuff, you do have a lot of hours in this video game. That is World of Warcraft levels of hours. But also I think some of the criticism of it felt unfair to me because I've been very sort of I think I was likely one of the first people in the sort of mainstream press that was critical of Destiny back in the day for what I saw was them implementing Skinner boxes into a game that didn't need them. And that's where I see the difference. Whereas I see games like FIFA and I see games like Destiny that are essentially, Destiny is them attempting to turn a single player game into a what we now call game as a service that people can play for hours and hours and hours and hours. And how do we keep people in there? We keep them in there by giving them these, these reward ratios that sort of, along with the social side of things, keep them in the game because we want to sell them an expansion pack down the road. Similarly with FIFA, with the Ultimate Team stuff, that is pure sort of, like RNG is basically just a misused term in gaming. RNGs in game design and in practice of coding is one very particular thing, and basically no games are really using it in the way that people talk about it. We're just talking about variability, and variability in something in like FIFA is actually like really controlled with their Ultimate Team stuff, whereas Balatro is a closed system. Balatro is like the game is the variability. It's not like they have infused this game with Skinner box stuff in a way to get you to play it more. It is literally how card games work. So I'm less critical of it because to me it's like, oh, that's just the game that they made. It's not like they're implementing this stuff in it. And the fact that it isn't multiplayer and the fact that it isn't using your real money is the designer understanding the dangers of those things and being like, okay, I'm going to get you an out. I also, like, weirdly enough, I didn't find Balatro to be particularly kind of like Binding of Isaac, actually. It's kind of stingy. Like, it's hard to beat the challenges, I think. Maybe I'm just shit at it, but it's not like a game like what have I been playing recently? I've been playing recently. Astro Bot. Astro Bot is a game that is constantly like, that is the most Skinner boxy fucking game of all time. That has like, hey, welcome to a level. We're going to remind you of some nostalgia. Make sure you collect those. Now you're going to spend your money on the gachapon things. Like, it literally has gotcha things. But the game ends. So we don't critique it for that as much. You know what I mean? But because the nature of roguelikes is that you can play them forever in the same way that Destiny and FIFA tried to get you to play forever, that's where I think some of the critique comes in. So I'm not going to sit here and say that like it's not a game that's not addictive and has addictive qualities, but personally I think that it's an easy target because it looks like video poker.
That's fair.
And I don't necessarily think that it has earned that given the design of it.
There's an interesting, like, blurry distinction between things that are engaging and good game feel and things that are like verging on dark patterns. Because like this conversation also came up with Vampire Survivors. When you get the bonus thing, it's like it's like fucking surging on the screen, and it's like. It's great. It's fucking great. Like it just does something to your brain where you're like, oh my god, I fucking won. I won $1,000.
Juice. Is that what you guys were calling it?
Juice is like, juice is a good term for it. It's like things like screen shake and like fucking particles shooting everywhere and stuff. But it is interesting too because it is, I don't know where the line is where it crosses over from like juice into dark pattern.
It's hard. Like, I just think it should be analyzed a little bit. Like, that's and again, it's somewhat subjective, right? Like, clearly, I've played a certain amount of time of it. I think if I was smarter and better at puzzles, like Jesse is, I might be in that situation, right? He's the Lorelei and the laser eyes guy, right? We'll talk about that a little bit in a podcast. I think next podcast time.
Yeah, next week's. Yeah,
excellent. Which I'm excited to talk about, by the way. Holy shit!
I can't wait.
Yeah, no. Jesse also made a really good point that like this is the one game this year that I have seen people who I do not necessarily consider capital G gamers picking this fucking thing up and loving it. There was a guy I met briefly at one of my daughter's little fucking theater class thing and she met this friend who was from a different school, and I was talking to the dad, and video games came up and he was on Switch, and I was like, oh, have you played Balatro, by the way? And he was like, no, what's that? And I was like, I'm really sorry for mentioning it. And then about a month later, like 2 weeks ago, I saw him briefly and I was like, oh, have you played Balatro? And his wife and daughter shout back and say, it's all he does now. And he said, yeah, my brother and my cousin are playing it now too. So it's like, it just has that thing where it's like, there are very few games where you recommend to somebody and kind of everyone, you can imagine anyone playing it in a way, because of just how easy it is to to get into it. Like you said, the early incentives in that game and the way it unravels its strategy is just like, it's like you're seeing different layers of the fucking Matrix or something. You're like, holy shit, you know. Those early days when people were posting videos of the scores they were getting and the combinations they were doing was a lot of fun because it was like, Jesus, you can do that?
Yeah.
The card aesthetic thing is interesting too, because you mentioned that this game gets perhaps undue criticism because of its aesthetic association with gambling and casinos and stuff. But it is also interesting how the like Hoyle's card deck thing makes it more potentially aesthetically accessible to just like people who aren't into whatever. Like Slay the Spire is so fucking fantasy RPG coded that it's like, you know, my brother is like plays, you know, like Horizon Zero Dawn and Red Dead and stuff. And I think if I showed him something like Slay the Spire, he might get into it, but there's a chance he'd be like, I don't know, this is kind of like, what is this, like Magic the Gathering or something?
Yeah, that's a good.
Whereas Balatro is like fucking, you know, the ace of, everyone knows the ace of spades.
Yeah, that's something that Local Thunk talks about a lot in the Dear Dwyer episode of like avoiding that aspect of it, right? Being more universally acceptable makes it, and you know, was that intentional? It seemed like it stemmed for Local Thunk to come more directly from like not being interested in that themselves, right? Like seeing what was it, Northern Lion play Luck Be a Landlord, a game that is basically just a roulette wheel, or not a roulette wheel, a slot machine just spinning until you get the points that you want, the numbers go up. Like that was part of what inspired starting to make that game. So it's like, it wasn't exclusively trying to avoid the fantasy part of it to be like, oh, it'll be more mass appeal. It was just like, he's like, I just don't like this. I would rather it look like this, which is, I don't know. I just, it's so interesting to hear the story of the creation of Balatro, the way that it turned out to be what it is, because any other day of the week, games like this drop all the time. Not exactly like this, obviously, but games that are largely just score attack, playing cards, roguelike stuff. Roguelike card-based deck builder, honk shoe, I'm falling asleep. I don't care. There's a million of those on Steam.
There's more now.
Exactly. And there will be more in the future, and they will have real money buttons attached to no. But it's, you know, it's just, it turns out it's really, really sick sometimes when you make a really good one.
And it's fun that like because the game starts from this somewhat normie place that you can then drag it in really weird directions, and it ends up like adding to the sort of mystic feel of the whole thing. You know, when you're like Arcana cards, like what the fuck is this? What's going on
here?
Are
there tarot cards in here?
Pagan shit in my poker game. Poker is like the least spiritual game in the world.
That is true. Those are sort of the two poles of spirituality. Is believing in tarot cards and playing with fucking poker cards.
There's probably like a casino somewhere that has like a chapel in it, and it is the most cursed place in the world. Like, it's like, just like it's like a vortex of swirling negative energy. Like
there's a drunken priest in there who's just like swinging from a bottle.
It's just a bad time. Like, table's open at 9 a.m. Oh, we're gonna
let's get this wedding over with. I gotta gamble.
Right. So I don't know. It just exists in that, and I there's something about like I don't know about you guys, but like there's something about the sort of seediness of the Vegas casino kind of thing that I really enjoy fucking with as well. Like, I think to me the aesthetic of this game, the sort of like dingy, you know, it's kind of like Hotline Miami. It makes me feel a bit gross.
Yeah, it like smells like cigarettes. Like not in the most non-literal way imaginable, but like I feel like when I play Balatro, the room fills with cigarette smoke.
Yeah. 100. I'm in the 80s and I'm in a Japanese casino in the corner somewhere. Just like,
all the buttons are yellowed from just like ages of cigarettes settling on them.
My wife and kid. I want my child to go to sleep. I'll go home at 9 o'clock. I'll come home at 10 o'clock tonight when everyone's asleep and they won't notice that I'm drunk and I've wasted all of our money on.
Honey, have you been out playing Balatro again?
Right. It's like the addictive. To me, is it methadone again? No, it's not. But it's like the addictive, shitty feeling of like, it's like a really pasteurized version of that I get to play for like 2 seconds. It's like porn. Like I get to like indulge in this sicko fucking.
I feel like you're
world.
making Jesse's case stronger and stronger by the minute.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. It's all silly and whatever. But like, I went to the casino. I watched my brother-in-law play blackjack, and I was like, oh shit. I get why people get addicted. And I was thinking back to playing Balatro. I was thinking back to playing Vampire Survivors. I was thinking back to these games that like are just fun on the surface. Like it's fun watching the numbers go up and watching it go boop, 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 boop.
I fucking hate playing poker in front of people. It makes me feel so embarrassed.
I wish I felt the same way. I was watching blackjack like, oh yeah, dude, I could easily lose $1,000.
No, blackjack's fun to play with people because it's
but
just
poker's like
yeah. You pretend you're counting cards and freak
the
them out
river is showing up and I'm out of reds. I got to go buy some more darts.
Yeah, if you're like not risk averse, then I bet those, and that's what happens, right? Is people who don't have that risk aversion or chasing the dragon or whatever, then they get stuck in a hole. But like there is no risk. I guess the risk of Balatro is you play too much of it. But you know,
it is interesting. This is like a little tangential, but it is interesting how I feel like I have a very addictive personality for certain things, but I feel like my brain knows when something is too unhealthy to let it get to that point or something. Yeah. Like with real gambling, I don't enjoy it, even though I love fucking cards, because there's a part of my brain that's like, don't enjoy this. You can't fucking enjoy this. And Balatro is like the safe version, so I'm allowed to fucking have an unhealthy relationship to it. Or like, you know, like I had like an injury once and I took opioids for it. I was like, this feels great. And I'm like, well, don't fucking... Don't enjoy it too much.
The same thing like, at the casino. I won like $30 on my first spin. I was like, cool, I can leave. And then I didn't. And then I was okay. I won my money back. I left $100. I came in with $100. So it worked out. But I was like, I'm watching Cassie gamble. I'm watching her mom gamble. And I'm like, I can't do this. I need to walk away.
Gamble what you can lose.
Exactly. Well, even that, I'm like, I can't even, what's the point? I could just buy chocolate and it's good automatically.
I think about gambling sometimes when I go to the arcade with my daughter, because it's a similar thing. Because you're basically like saying, how much is my time worth? Like here, I'm going to spend X amount over the next hour. We went to Chuck E. Cheese on the weekend actually, and they do it by time. There, you can buy a card that just like is an hour, and then you go around and play everything for an hour. But most of the games they have there are super like chance based, very ones that you just do. They're not like games of skill, which I really think is I understand why they do it, because it's like, oh, kids want to play for 2 hours in an arcade and it'll cost people shitloads of money if we do that. But if we do it by time, but the problem is the games that they put in there are the sort of Skinner boxy things that like you probably shouldn't be letting kids do. Yeah. And the ones that my daughter even like enjoys, like the one that she enjoys the most is like those ones where you put the coins in and they drop down and then they slide out and then and it pushes. So there's like a million different versions of those now, and they're basically, some of them are somewhat skill based, like try and get the coin in the slot, that type of thing, like very basic, but there's no strategy to them or anything. And I'm like, yeah, of course, like that's
because you want to see all the shit fall off a cliff. It's
you want to see the shit fall off the cliff.
I loved that when I was a kid. And it's like, you get that feeling of, it's like that meme of the guy he's digging in the tunnel and there's all the diamonds behind the wall. It's just like 99% of gamblers quit before they hit it big. That's how that game feels.
That's so true. Just like, that's exactly
100%.
And it's one quarter, like it's such an inconsequential amount, or like one fucking token, even less consequential.
I don't even know what one token is. I can't convert that into real money.
That one token could get me a lifetime of parachute army men at the ticket exchange thing.
I could have the world's hardest starbursts for the next 2 weeks.
I had to wait 25 fucking minutes so she could get 2 Chubba Chups or Chupa Chups, or what we're calling them.
Oh, brother.
Lollipops, because the fucking, okay, I'm not getting into it. Chuck E. Cheese. I knew what I was getting into when I brought it to Chuck E. Cheese. I should
just read Danny's Yelp review if you want to know the rest.
Exactly. Yeah. Anything else to say about Balatro? We seem to have. It was a fun to talk about all that aspect of it as well. I think everything else, came up a lot during the podcast. The art's really good. Good. I'm surprised this guy's never made a commercial game or done art before. Like Did you see they released the physical pack as well?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's on Fangamer or something.
The only other thing that I thought was worth mentioning is in the interview you did with Local Thunk, they mentioned that their background in making games was building like simulations rather than games or something, if I recall correctly. And I thought that was really interesting, that their approach to making games, because they weren't someone who was like, financial pressure's on, I gotta make the big hit. They would just sort of like build interesting simulations and systemic little things, and then eventually just like hit upon this fucking incredible game. And I think that that's a very cool and like organic and authentic way to develop games, is just like have an interest in systems and coding and computer science and game design, and just sort of, you know, naturally explore or whatever without the kind of financial like he didn't make this game and was like, I gotta make a fucking poker game because then it'll make the pop noise and the people will get addicted, and, you know what I mean? Like it's
you'd
just,
probably make a way worse, weirder version of this game if you did, you know what I mean? If you tried to make a game where like maybe you could buy packs, or you know what I mean? Because and they've shown incredible restraint. Like, you know, I'm sure the game is selling so much that who fucking cares at this stage, but also they could easily have done that, gone down that route of, you know, okay, now we're going to give you all this and that and this and that, and, you know, buy extra packs and extend your game and all that. And they've not done that, which is, you know, the right thing to do.
Well, if you want to talk about dark patterns, actually, I didn't even think about this, but there was a trading card game shop simulator that came out recently that I saw a ton of people were streaming on Twitch, and I have not played it. I don't know enough about it. This is not a critique of it because I'm coming from a place of ignorance, but I clicked on a few streams out of just like, you know, curiosity of what this was, and it was just people just like chain opening endless packs of non-existent, like, you know, whatever pseudo Pokemon cards or whatever. And I thought that was interesting because I was like, oh shit, this is like if Balatro didn't have a game attached to it. Like if all you did was click on the packs and it went boom, and then the little things popped up, you know?
Dude, that's what FIFA is. Like FIFA is, as far as I'm aware, I mean, I know it actually is, but as far as I'm aware, is not a sports game. It's just a game where you open packs and maybe Messi's in there. That's all I know. For kids in primary school or in elementary school, it sounds like it is.
Yeah. And the craziest part of that is every year it resets, and they don't care.
So you lose all your stuff?
I think you lose all. I might be wrong. I'm pretty sure you lose all of them. Maybe some stuff carries over, but I could be wrong. Podcast and NoClip that video if I'm wrong, but I talked to a dad whose son was, I haven't done Ultimate Team ever since it started because I was like, fuck no, I'm not. That's Panini stickers that I got out of when I was like 13 because it bankrupted me, and I'm not stupid enough to. I can't even swap these fucking ones, I don't think, because at least then you could, like, you had all your extras. You know what I mean? If you guys do baseball cards or whatever, like the sticker books for this Premier League every year, and you'd get like, oh shit, I've got 2 Paul Mersons, I need to fucking swap it for a Matt Letizia, you know, all the best soccer players in the late 90s.
Mine was Yu-Gi-Oh! And you're just saying things where I'm like, yeah, that's Blue Eyes White Dragon, basically. If I said a name from Yu-Gi-Oh!
Sort of Matt Letizia sounds like a you know,
it's a spell card.
Exactly, yeah. I cast 7 Glenn Helder on you. Yeah, so yeah, I agree. It's that and even if Balatro was multiplayer, I could see that being the case, or had leaderboards, or, you know, but they've not gone down that route. So fair play, Balatro. What'll we give it? This is the hard part. Remember, we got to give it an award. We got to give it its own award.
Yeah, this is tough. I was trying to think of Slay the Spire puns, but it seems too easy. It's both too easy and it's low hanging fruit, and also it's a very hard pun to make, so it doesn't seem like a fruitful avenue.
Yeah, card games, something with you gotta make a pun in there.
Joker Poker. I think Joker Poker is
that's like an app store game.
That's the rip-off version of Balatro. That has the in-app purchases.
Legitimately,
it's got to be like
hand.
Best hand is good. Yeah. What's like the what is special about Balatro? What is like the core of it that is like that is praiseworthy? You know what I mean?
It's a great question.
It's the kind of thing where it's like the easiest and quickest thing to play, but you can accidentally play it the longest. So there's something where it's like good. The quick play to the infinite, like yeah, I don't know.
One more hand, one more.
There's something about the addictive nature.
Hit me.
Yeah, hit me.
Yeah.
Tap.
And like, yeah, I always think of like,
wrong card game, but let's not think about it too much.
I think of like the link of that with like cigarettes, because like there's something that's like there's something that's aesthetically cool about cigarettes, and there's something that's aesthetically cool about.
Finally, someone says it.
Yeah,
It's true.
I
got cigarettes here.
Stuff, you know?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, hey, look, I know that. Yeah, it's teachers and every, you know, people will tell you it's not literally the only reason to smoke is it looks cool. Every other reason is bad. That and taking breaks from work. I think that's what got me in there sometimes.
That's why I started smoking, because the only reason you can get breaks at my waiter job.
Smoking the whole pack, is that what we're saying? Is that what we're calling that?
Pack, because Joker packs, that's good.
Oh.
Okay.
We've got something there. You're right. We've got something there.
Hashtag Joker Pack. Just call it that. Hashtag Joker Pack. Smoking
Why
that
so
hashtag
serious?
Joker Pack.
Smoking on that.
Yeah,
Joker
why
pack.
so serious? You want to know how I got these scars? And you're just smoking a big
God.
cigarette.
Someday, someone who listened to the NoClip podcast is going to assassinate a CEO, and we're going to get in trouble because of saying why so serious.
That guy was a gamer. We
We got to
don't
check
have to get into
Luigi's
it.
Spotify Wrapped.
Yeah,
I think he was somebody. I could. I don't want to say. Somebody said somewhere that he was a intern at a.
Oh, yeah.
A studio that
developer.
we've never done a doc. Actually, did we? No, we didn't. No.
No, I went there for GameSpot though, and I was definitely thinking like, I wonder if he was there. I didn't check the years on it.
Maybe he played Balatro. Maybe that's what pushed him over the edge.
Yeah. It's the John
Pack
Hinckley
is good.
Award.
What would you say about Pack? What's a term you'd use for cigarettes with Pack in it? Like packing heat. Smoke. Yeah, that's good.
There's also like the idea of like a games that should be locked behind a counter. Like you have to be old
Yeah,
enough
you're
or
right,
responsible
yeah.
enough to play this. But like,
Yeah, you have to show ID for it.
yeah, it's like
adults only.
surgeon
21
gamers
and
warning.
up.
Surgeon
Yeah,
Gamer.
Surgeon
We did that one
Yeah.
year, or we tried to do something like that. Yeah, the Surgeon General's
Surgeon
Award.
gaming.
Surgeon Gamer's warning is quite funny.
That's really good.
It's like warning: a game is highly addictive.
Yeah, it has a picture on the back of a guy
But it's
who's like,
fucking cool.
Yeah.
it's a dude on the back who has big bags under his eyes, and it's like this could happen to you.
I learned it from watching you.
Cool guy cigarettes.
My dad stepped out for a pack of Balatro and never came home.
I think you've murdered Frank.
That's it.
That might be it. My dad went out for a pack of Balatro and never came home award.
Yeah.
It's so
Because
long.
it also it's the addictive side of it. It also
Yeah.
like he couldn't stop. He's still out there somewhere playing Balatro.
Yeah.
He's still coming home. I know it's been 20 years, but he's coming home. He's
coming
right?
home.
Oh my god.
Once he
One
gets
more
that
hit.
golden
Yeah, one
steak,
more.
he's
Yep,
good.
yep.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on for now because that's created enough turbulent air around the name that we're not going to be able to come up with anything else for a couple of minutes anyway. So let's for the moment. Me and Frank seem to be on board with that one. Jesse and Jeremy, what do you guys think with for the
I
moment?
guess it's funny.
I endorse it fully.
We've never had a really stupidly long award
Yeah.
I
either.
like it. Yeah.
It's pretty funny. All right, for the moment, Balatro has the "My dad went out for a pack of Balatro and never came home" award.
No, I love it. I just didn't. I was like, the rules have
Yeah.
changed. We've done 2 years of this, and it used to be. It's got to be like this. I like this.
Yeah,
this is
exactly,
great. Let's
yeah.
keep the energy going.
Exactly.
It barely fits on a trophy.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Perfect.
Yeah. And non-existent trophies. All right, we'll do that for now.
We got to make
Okay,
that
on to
trophy
our
just a
next
cigarette pack.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, on to our next one. So, Astro Bot, September 6th, this one came out from Team Asobi, not to be confused with Asobo, the folks who made Microsoft Flight Simulator and a Plague Tale Requiem, or just a Plague Tale. Astro Bot is the only exclusive game, I think, in all of our 10 games. Yes, it looks like it's the case, although some are just like indie games that have only just so happened to come out on PC. Astro Bot is a PlayStation game. It is made by PlayStation. It's a wholly owned studio of PlayStation, and it features a hell of a lot of fucking PlayStation stuff in it. Who wants to pick up on Astro Bot?
I would be
Anything?
glad to. Yeah.
Please.
I adore Astro Bot. This game is basically like the Disneyland version of PlayStation, where every level is a different ride. The gift shop is you checking the PlayStation store to see if you can buy it or if it's already in your library. Yeah, so like even before the game came out, I remember at Summer Games Fest, this was the game that people were talking about. Like, I just played Astro Bot. This is the best platformer ever. And I was like, oh my, really? But it wasn't that surprising because the little demo game that they made years ago was phenomenal. The PS5 launch game, which like still to this day until Astro Bot is kind of the only game that used every feature of the controller. So the physical element of playing this game, like just anytime you get to really feel the haptic feedback of the triggers, like there's different stages. Like the one that immediately comes to mind is like when you have the boxing gloves, you really
so
feel the like boom, boom. Their controller makes noises, everything about it. It's just so delightful. We can like Column B is getting into all the PlayStation brand stuff, which I also adore and is so silly. But yeah, this game was just complete. It's like so joyous. So like other games have heavy themes and there's things that are subverting. Astro Bot is just a like pure, although it's such a video game of just like, all right, here's your level, here's the boss, here's the collectibles, here's like the cumulative points you can spend, just like Smash Brothers trophy thing in Melee. Like, I don't know. And a big factor of it too is like you can beat and platinum it in like 15 hours. So it doesn't outstay its welcome. It's like, oh, that was so perfect. And it never really sagged for me either. So I am like a huge fan of this game.
Well, I'm sure everyone will talk about lots of aspects of the gameplay and the design and stuff. There's one area that I want to talk about that I find particularly impressive is like mascot games are really hard to do in 2024 because like we have just covered so much ground. Like now when you make a new character, it's like, look like that, or it's this, or it's that, or it's whatever. And then what's even harder is creating like a platform that doesn't seem blank enough that it's uninteresting, and also isn't like doesn't have such a overriding style that the other parts don't fall into it right. And they managed to make like an aesthetic for this game in not just how Astro looks, in how the world looks, and how all the different worlds look, that feels really cohesive, but also that they're able to slip in all this other stuff. Like, because especially in this one, because in this one they have like these weird like pixel levels, right, that are sort of like throwback 8-bit levels where stuff like falls apart, kind of like Pixel Junk, no, not Pixel Junk Hero. What was the one? 3D Dot Game Hero, I believe it was called. Yeah. It was, God, that's like a blast from the past. Like that type of thing. The fact that they can put in a lot of these characters in the Astro style, and they work, like even the silliness of like, oh, some of them just, I think the only one that stood out to me is it doesn't work. It doesn't look like it's original and doesn't work within Astro was the Spyro unlock you get.
Yeah, it's just Spyro.
It's just Spyro. Whereas like Crash Bandicoot at least is like an Astro with like a helmet on, right? He's like a sports mascot or something, So I think that's really impressive that like the game has its own style and look, but it's not overbearing, but it's also not like just the most vanilla default shit. And I think a lot of that goes into the animation. I think the animation of the, like even when you're putting the PlayStation 5 back together, the little eyes and stuff that the screens have, the animation of all the baddies, especially the bosses, are just completely insane. Astro emotes so well. Also, so do all the little the little Astrobots you find are always in they're not just sitting somewhere, they're like hanging from a tree or like stuck in a thing and crying. There's so many assets and so many bespoke animations in this game, and I think it probably took them so much longer to add that care and attention, but I think that is like central to this thing feeling fun, because I just enjoyed, like, it never got boring. It never got like, oh, I've seen that, I'm done with that, I'm doing this. The levels kept getting interesting, and also the way they were presented with the different enemies and the different stuff was just, yeah, it was always, it was like every frame they gave a shit about like what you're seeing and how stuff is animated and looks, and it really makes it so it's just joyous the whole way through.
Yeah, that abundance of animation, I also feel like it expanded in ways that I didn't expect. Because, like, you see them struggling in the level or getting dragged around by a UFO. It's like, oh, that's fun and delightful. But then at the end of like the galaxies, solar systems, I don't know, whatever. I don't think they have a sun in the middle. I don't know what these categorize as. But when you unlock the boss level, there's like a physical like lock around it. And when you unlock it, you have to have a certain threshold of bots, and they all sort of like swarm and fly into it and break it. And it's cool when stuff like that happens, like in the UI. It makes the UI feel like it is itself like part of the game, as opposed to, it doesn't feel like a menu. It feels like, like a little thing is happening and you're just watching it happen. And the abundance of animation thing, I feel like, expands into the UI and the menu, and like everything in this game feels like haptic and like it's buzzing with life, not just the game.
It's true. Like even like when you jet in at the start of the level, like some of those are just you're going in, but like a lot of them, especially later, you have to use the DualShock to like actually get shit. You know what I mean? Like, that's really cool. Or in the central hub world, when you have to do that similar thing that Jeremy said of like getting X amount of Astros, they could have just said like, oh, you go up and you press, oh, you've got this many? Great, the door opens. But like, no, it's like, we need 100 Astros because they have to create like like a weird like Indiana Jones style rope of Astros holding onto each other, or like a bridge across the thing so that you can walk across them. Or like one of them has both. One of them has like a bunch of ropes that are swinging that you then have to like jump from hanging Astro, 20 Astros hanging off each other to the next one, to the next. Like, it's just they always went that bit further to validate like this thing. We're not just going to make this. God, can you imagine like the meetings you could have where it's like, oh no, we'll save like X amount by just having that be a button. But like it seemed like every time they had the chance to refer it to just be a button, they're like, no, we're going to do something fucking weird and, extra. It's just so extra, the whole thing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I also, this is a little tangential, but I haven't played a PS5 game in so long because I use my PS5 controller a lot, but it's plugged into my PC. So I had to dust off my PS5 this week to play this. And
what was the last one? What, a Demon Souls remake or something like that? Or
I think
did you play that?
I did play
Elden
that.
Ring? Did you play Elden Ring on PC?
I played Elden Ring on PC. I feel like the last game I played on my PS5. This is okay. My girlfriend uses it when she visits. But I think the last game I played was God of War Ragnarok for Game of the Year, which was that was 2 years ago.
I think that was last year.
Was that last year?
I can't remember.
I want to say
It was
last year.
too.
It was a long time ago.
I don't know.
Regardless, firing this up, I felt like such a fucking boomer because I'm so unused to the haptics. And I feel like the haptics are made for people who play console games that are used to them. And in this game, they're particularly over the top. And it took me like 10 minutes to not be like, this fucking controller is like going crazy. Like I was so like stimulated. But I felt like I was fucking like an agoraphobe in Tokyo. Like I was just like, I couldn't handle it for a minute. And it was very funny just because I was like, this is fucking, I'm sure this hits like just a little bit beyond the pale for most people. But for me, it was like a sensory fucking overload because they went so hard on it.
That's fair. Yeah, they really, like every little footstep, like if you're on like metal on metal, it was like, you know what I mean? You can hear it as well. The speaker, they did a lot of speaker stuff in this one. I think I turned it down when I started. And then I ended up putting it back up when I got used to it, I guess. But yeah, you're right though. It's like, it reminds me, like every console's done this, right? Where it's like, hey, we're the first party people. We have to like show everyone how this tech works, and then no one will ever use it. Like maybe Naughty Dog have a little bit, but like that's kind of it. First party stuff, especially.
Speaking of first party stuff, it's very interesting because this week was the first time I played Astro Bot. I did not play this when it came out. Like I played this for Game of the Year, and my expectation going into it was there will be Astro Bot, and then there will be like the PlayStation homage stuff, and like obviously he like drives the big PS5 whatever, but like then I kind of thought the levels would just be there's ice cream level, here's like desert level, and then you're collecting Crash Bandicoots and whatever the fuck. I kind of thought that in a parallel universe where every because you unlock like an ape escape level at some point, and I was like, oh, that's very cool to have entire levels that are themed after PlayStation classics. There's a part of me that wishes the game leaned harder into that and every level was an homage level.
Yeah, they are probably some of the most standout ones. Like there's a Horizon one, there's an Uncharted one. The one where me and my daughter completely lost our mind was there is a Loco Roco one, which is played predominantly in 2D, like fake 2D. It's like kind of a Little Big Planet 2D, right? Where it's basically that way. I'm not. That's a good point. Like I do wonder if some games can do that. Some games, like Ape Escape, or they found novel ways. Maybe it'd be harder if it was like Devil May Cry or I don't know, like
that's true.
But considering how much they don't reuse assets in levels, like they do to a certain extent, but like considering how much they don't, a lot of levels in this game are a totally new theme that's not based on a game. Like all the Wipeout people, I think, were in one level that was like kind of vaguely futuristic, but it wasn't Wipeout themed. So yeah, I wonder how much more work I'm sure it's more work, but I don't think it's astronomically more work to do what you're talking about.
No, I think they also could have gotten away. Again, I'm pitching a hypothetical. This is just for fun. This is not a criticism at all of Astro Bot. I was just a thought that popped into my head because they in the Ape Escape level you do catch like the little apes and stuff. But I was thinking that like you could have still like the standard Astro Bot enemies sort of permeating the worlds of whatever, like the God of War level and stuff, and just have those enemies be just put like a fucking.
They literally have God of War.
No. I saw. I looked up some of the stuff that I didn't manage to get to just because I knew I wouldn't have time to play the whole game before this. And I was thinking you could have like a narrative conceit where these like robots permeate the world, the whatever, the PlayStation universe or whatever, and it's like a plague upon the world or whatever. So, because then you don't have to have like a bespoke enemy for every level. You can have sort of like the reused robots and stuff,
which I think they do, right?
Right. But I'm saying you could do the whole game could be game reference levels without it having to be like, and this one has whatever Goombas in it. That's not PlayStation.
They are kind of like PlayStation Goombas, aren't they?
That's how you say it. They are fucking, they're robot Goombas.
Jump on their heads, or just use your little rocket boosters. I want to do a special shout out to the replayability of the levels. They have this thing where you can spend 200 coins to get like this little chicken or bird to fly around with you. So once you've completed a level, you can go back to it, and then this little sort of like bird house will pop up. You smash it, because everything in this game is, like you said, is haptic and extra. And then you do the whole square, pull the thing out. It's like, you sure you want to spend the 200 coins? And then when you do, this little bird flies around with you. And whenever you are near an Astro Bot or a puzzle piece or a secret level, it'll basically chirp. It'll let you know where it is. It'll chirp faster, like a metal detector, the closer you get to where it is. And it's so good, because like so much of this game is going back and cleaning up the levels that you haven't 100%ed yet. And generally, I found that the ones that I hadn't got were somewhat hidden in a way that I hadn't grokked the first time and might struggle to the next time. And just knowing the general area where it was really, really helpful. To be like, oh, this bird isn't chirping now. That means I don't have to spend like 2 minutes in this one section looking under every single, plant and jumping off the edge to see if there's something here. And then when I got to an area where it started chirping, I was like, oh, cool. There's something here. That's great. And now I can activate and look around. That was such a smart way of encouraging me, at least, to play those levels. And pretty much every time I did that, I knew I was going to get everything in the level the second time around. The only situations I wouldn't was then there's a couple of cases where you might find a secret level before the end of the level, which is a little bit annoying, because then you have to come back and get any stuff you missed later. But I found that to be so smart.
It also does the great thing where if you get a collectible, you can quit out back to the main menu without having to like finish the level. So it's like, like just quality of life stuff in here is like fantastic.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, you can. Yeah, if you grab an Astro or whatever, you can just like, I'm out. It's just so. Load times also on this thing are super short. It's crazy how fast this thing streams, and the levels are massive. And some of the boss fights, I just had a lot of them are very like trying to make you complete it. You remember the Big Brother one with the big robot? Remember that? Like just the level where it's a big robot that you unlock, and then it like stands up and you walk along it, and he turns up later in a different level as well. Just really every level I went into, I was like, there's going to be some fun shit in here that I haven't seen, and that's so important in one of these games.
There's also a lot of like big gimmick levels. Like the one that comes to mind is like one where you get super small. Like it's like you click. Oh. Actually, yeah. Like a lot of the levels, you unlock like some kind of companion robot, and that it's like your backpack. And there's some that's like the boxing glove, whatever. But yeah, there's one you can freeze time. But like the coolest one is you shrink down to a mouse, and it's like, oh my god, it's so.
That's
cool.
Amazing. The mouse, the one where you shrink down, and it's like every time, because you go so small, and to the point where there's like tiny little holes you go into, and then there's entire levels in there, and it's not like you like, here's the place where you get small. You can trigger that thing fucking anywhere and you instantly get small. That and the slow-mo one is insane, because they had it where it slows down time to a crawl, to almost like stopped entirely, and where to the point where like the first time you realize that a lot of the projectiles that the enemies are throwing at you, you can jump on like towards them, is, oh my god. There's one part where I think it's at the end of that level where you have to jump. It's like a vortex of spinning like levels and knives and all this, and you hit the button and you just like go ding ding like across all of them, and then it's like, oh my god, absolutely terrific. Yeah. What a great thing. It's the best platformer in years, for sure. So special. Jesse, do you have any thoughts on Astro?
It's a good game. I don't know. I echo everything you guys have said. I remember playing it for the first time right after it launched. Well, actually, no, I think that was like wedding week, so we were a little busy. But when I finally got to play it, it was like, I just remember joy, nothing else really. It took me back to playing Super Mario Galaxy for the first time. Like that, it's actually the way you guys are talking about it, very similar to playing Mario Galaxy. Like you finish levels and then you come back and there's like secret, whoa, Mario's Galaxy form, beat him in a race. There's a lot of that similar overlap in terms of like quality, in terms of their willingness to get weird with it, like do stuff that visually platformers can't do, because getting the budget to do what Astro Bot is doing is incredibly rare nowadays. You're not seeing, especially even just from Sony, who used to be great at making 3D platformers, which I think Astro Bot is sort of an homage to, is that this used to be the sort of thing that they were known for making, were these childish, complimentary video games that are very joyful and very fun and bright and colorful and doing a lot of interesting and unique things every time. Not to say that they're not making great games now, but like this style of game used to be their bread and butter. So playing something like Astro Bot at times is like just so, like, it makes you feel like you're 12 again or 20 or whatever, right? It makes you feel young and like excited for video games. You're like, this is so joyful. I can't believe the fact that they turned the PlayStation into a toy again is so cool for a console that has felt so self-serious. Console feeling self-serious sounds dumb, but like just the way
that's fair.
Yeah, the PlayStation has marketed itself as this very self-serious. Look, this is where you come to play the HBO video games. Like for it to have a game that's like this polished platformer that just is so fun from the second you press the start button to the last moment when you're flying, walking through the credits, like, which is such a fantastic sequence. Everything about it is just so much fun. Like to turn the PlayStation 5 controller into a toy where you're interacting with what feels like a digital toy is like, hats off to the team. That's what they've done. You guys are making a good point that like they have made the tech demo games for the DualSense controller, and somehow they made an even better one this time around. And the VR, with the Move stuff and just the headset. So I can't wait for them to make another game. And, if they make another one that's an homage to PlayStation, that's fine with me. But also if they just get to make one that's just fun and like their own aesthetic, I would also be happy with that. I wouldn't be upset about it.
Yeah,
you know what
I could go either way. Yeah.
I would love to see a Team Asobi Banjo-Kazooie game. I can't think about Banjo-Kazooie while I was playing
Microsoft
this game.
doesn't give a shit anymore, so why not?
Yeah. What's that IP worth? Like $50, $100? Come on.
Favorite, you guys talked in the podcast about the sort of the IP porn that goes on in this game. It was so funny how many, there was a bunch of these where I'm like, I'm the video game expert as far as my daughter is concerned, and she's like, who's that? And I'm like, I have a fucking notion. That's some anime shit. I don't know what that's, either a Final Fantasy thing or a something else I don't know about. But there were some absolute gems in there. Do you guys have any favorites? Any favorite characters that popped up? I liked a lot of the Horizon ones in the Horizon level. I think I mentioned already Devil Dice was my favorite one. That, and what's the one with the falling blocks? That PlayStation 1 falling blocks game. I'll look that up.
The Intelligent Cube?
Is that what it is? It's the one where there's where they're falling towards you. Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I think so.
Is it Intelligent Cube? Is that what it's called?
Catherine.
Yeah, Intelligent Cube. Yes, the Intelligent Cube one was particularly stupid, which I thought that was pretty funny. Any other ones for you guys?
I mean, I'm always so happy anytime Parappa the Rappa is acknowledged.
Oh, yeah.
So having them in Jammer Lammy and an extra special surprise, and then all the Resident Evil stuff is so cute. Like
it's great.
Like finding them in the levels is awesome, but then that's extra element of like getting everyone's like gachapon accessory. So it's like you have Claire trying to like unlock a door, but the key she needs right behind her. You have Leon trying to insert a puzzle piece, but if you knock it, him and the zombie try to pick it up, and it's like. They have typewriter.
The door is there too, right? They have the door, so the dogs turn up whenever you hit the door. Yeah.
It's just so cute. So yeah, the Resident Evil stuff sparkled me so much. I was so
Metal
happy.
Gear Solid ones were good too, actually. It's Psycho Mantis. Yeah, that was. Yeah, there's the orange, of course, the box and all that. Shout out to David Hayter, everyone's favorite Raziel. Go check out our Soul Reaver doc.
I like the Katamari when you smack it, he rolls you up, and then you get pushed around the level. I think there's a trophy for that too, but that was really
great.
Good.
I don't think I've done that one yet. I don't think I've gotten that gachapon yet. All right.
Sorry. One I want to mention the mouse from Moss. That was cool to see.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
I'm pretty sure that's what it is anyway, because it was one of the first PlayStation VR games. But yeah, it does a little sign language thing when you interact with it, I think. Anyway.
Oh, that's cool.
That was cool. Yeah.
I'm just reading the list because I did not play far enough to see this, but there's a Boku no Natsu Yasumi. There's a Boku bot, which I love.
Is there? I don't think I noticed that one either.
That's
That's
pretty good.
Wild.
Yeah, that's a deep cut.
Wow.
There's
Do you think you'll play
Lumber-
more of it, Jeremy?
Of what, Boku or Astro Bot?
Astro.
Boku no Natsu Yasumi I will play more of. Astro Bot, maybe. I don't know. I liked it. This is a time to celebrate games, and I enjoyed my time with it. I don't think it quite got its grabbers into me as deep as some people, if I'm being totally honest here. But yeah, I mean, I had fun playing the first Galaxy, and it was fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, let's name this thing. This might be hard because I feel like this game is so, to Jesse's point, it's just a good old school classic fun game. It is sort of flying in the face of much of what we celebrate about games today, narrative and immersion. This is just a fucking video game, which I think was why people found it so refreshing and interesting and fun. And it's just an easy game to like because it's not really throwing anything in front of you that you mightn't enjoy. So I've got like joy, fun, homage, platforming down here. To me, that like the simplistic nature of the game maybe could be reflected in its award, like fun, most fun. I don't know, most joyful.
Yeah, I mean,
anything standing out to you guys?
Yeah, this is a tough one. It kind of reminded me of playing Mario 64 on Christmas morning. Was the feeling I got. I was like, oh, this is just like. It's just fun, and it's doing. The Mario 64 comparison is interesting too because at the time for me, like I had played PC games, but playing a 3D console, 3D platformer, and it was Mario, and he's in 3D. That's crazy. It felt like a tech leap forward, and I feel like this game often is doing things where I'm like, oh, that's interesting. It's crazy that there's like a fucking bajillion sprinkles flying around on the screen, and like the controllers like putting up like it's all the bells and whistles are there. It's pulling out all the stops, so it feels like there's something about it that feels both playful and also like technically sophisticated or complex.
Yeah, it's like throwback, but also it did feel like a new toy, the way like a new console did. I haven't found that way maybe since the Wii or something. Where it's like, oh, this is a whole new thing. But you're right. Yeah, there was elements to this where I was like, ooh, that's crazy. Like, yeah, all these sprinkles I'm running through and the sound it's making, and I've throwback joy. Award could be one. I don't know. Throwback kind of works for the nostalgia and for the style, but I don't know about joy. What do you guys think?
Well, I'm also thinking of like the word amusement, because again, I compared it to like Disneyland. I'm also trying to think of like there's something in the element of like. Yeah, like, and it's like I don't want to keep leaning on like the literal like nostalgia, even though that's what the game is. But there is something like very simple, pure. It's like easiest to enjoy, which almost sounds like a negative. It's like no, it's
pure
like
joy.
It's pure. It really is that. It's like it is that feeling of walking down Main Street Disneyland and like seeing the thing from the movie you like or whatever. It's just like, oh, it's our Universal Studios. It's just like this game gets it.
It does feel a little like Sony Disney World. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you set it up right. All right, let's leave that there for the moment. We can come back to it. Do you guys want to have a break before we dive into the next two? Quick little bathroom break. All right,
yeah, why not?
We'll be back in 2 seconds for you guys to talk about UFO 50 and mouthwashing. See you then. Welcome back, friends. We're here to talk about two more games of 2024 that we enjoyed, or maybe 51 more games, depending on how you slice this particular pie. The next game came out about a week after Astro Bot did. UFO 50. It had been in development, though, for quite a long time. So many developers involved as well. Mossmouth, John Perry, I want to say Eric Surke, Moppin, and Paul Hubans, or Hubans, depending on which version of Balatro you pronounce. Mossmouth, of course, is Derek Yu, creator of Spelunky. And we interviewed him years and years and years ago about the wonders of mystery in video games. Clearly, this is something that was very important to him because they created this ridiculous game with 50 games within it based around a fictional video game studio that has since gone out of fictional existence and made a shitload of games. Various types of video games, many of which are brilliant on their own. UFO 50. Jeremy, you want to start with this one maybe?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, UFO 50 it's so many things. I feel like this was referenced when we interviewed Derek Yu and the Spelunky gang like 7 years and change ago. I think this has literally been in production for 8 years. I feel like I remember it being mentioned back then and then forgetting about it for several years and then it popping up and being like, that's a long time to make a video game. Playing this video game, that's a ridiculously short amount of time to have made this particular video game. It is a collection of 50 very authentic sort of retro 80s, 90s cusp video games, like NES era is mostly what this feels like it takes place in. And also kind of a throwback to like the multi-game carts, the multi-carts, whatever they call them back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
There was like what's it called? Action 52.
Action 52. That's the fucking one. That's the one.
And then there's also like, you know, in a lot of other countries where first-party Nintendo products weren't available, they had like the Tendy and the Dendy, whatever the fuck it's called, and those had like 9,999 games in one. So I feel like the collection game is very of the era as well. But yeah, this is a not only 50 games, it is also sort of the, you know, fictionalized story of a fictional game studio that released these games on a fictional console, the LX, and yeah, it is a story of a game studio told through 50 of their games, which is, if you pitched that to me and I was a producer, I'd be like, there's no fucking way that you'll ever finish that. And if you do finish it, it won't achieve what you're hoping to do. And I think that they pulled it off in such a ridiculous fashion that, yeah, we talked about this a little bit on the previous Game of the Year episode, but the way that there's a reuse of sprites, of sounds, of ideas, a revisitation of genre tropes and a reinvention upon them, the feeling of like a real innovation happening in game design that like it feels like years have gone by and they're like, let's make a sequel to Campanella. Campanella 2 is here. And you can feel like these fictional developers having thought about these ideas and let them ferment as they work on the intervening games. And it's just this bizarre, like metafictional collection of games. But beyond that, they're all fucking really good games. Like I found probably around 30 of these games are games that I truly got like into, played a shit ton of. I mean, I have like 100 something hours on UFO 50, so I've put serious time into this. And there's just a lot of like meta sort of like, you know, not achievements, but sort of achievements. Basically, you can gold a cartridge, you get a gold cartridge, and it shows up on your screen if you beat it. And then there's like the cherry cartridge, the stretch goal if you want to like really, you know, like platinum an NES game or whatever. For the Chivo heads out there, like Frank. But yeah, I just think it's brilliant. I'd love to talk about some specific games, but first, I'd just love to hear you guys' impressions.
I think the only thing that I want to add, because I think you guys have a lot more to talk about this than I do. What I really enjoyed about this was that in 2024, like especially the older we all get when we've played a lot of games, we sort of crave more novel design than a lot of classic games give us. And like when we talk about, like Bokuno is a good example, right? It's a game that clearly when we were children was not on our radar. And because it's so novel and interesting and weird, as adults we're interested in it because it's doing something totally different than what we, you know, are used to and what most games of that era were doing. And what I love about UFO 50 is that while the games look like games that could have come out there and control like games that might have come out during that era, the design sensibility of these games is clearly in 2024 designed by people and for people who want interesting, deep, you know, either multi-layered or systemic things that are going on and aren't the simplistic versions of these games that we would have played as kids. And I think that's what I find really interesting about it is like the games have depth and they're interesting and weird in ways that are clearly would only work as a throwback thing made in 2024. You know, these games, if they came out back in the 90s, nobody probably would have fucking played them because they were doing things. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I think a lot of them were doing things that like, you know, the gaming vocabulary wasn't there yet. People, you know, would have been too complicated or too esoteric or too deep or weird or complicated or odd. Whereas in 2024, they work, you know?
Yeah, that is interesting. It's sort of like a kayfabe or something. Like these are 50 indie games in disguise as retro games almost. they all feel like, I mean, the developer of Downwell was one of the people who worked on this, and I think Downwell is a perfect sort of like parallel of Downwell is whatever, it's like 1-bit or whatever. It's very sort of like low fidelity. It looks good, but just like 2 fucking colors, you're dropping down, kind of like feels like an NES game, but in its design, its juice, and a lot of its design sensibilities, and it feels like a like a modern indie game. And I think UFO 50 is striking that balance perfect, where it's like, yeah, like modern weird little indie games in disguise as old games.
Yeah, it's a bit like Shovel Knight in that way, or other games that are trying to be like NES or SNES style games, where they're not trying to follow the rules completely. In fact, some games in UFO 50 are pretty strong in like following technical limitations of the NES, which is cool to see. But for the most part, all of them are in some way doing things that memory wise would have been close to impossible on those consoles, because it's appealing to, and maybe this is me projecting a little bit, but I think it appeals to people who are nostalgic for that era of time of playing games that look like that and feel like that to some extent. But then also, I only know what Action 52 is because of the Angry Video Game Nerd. I did not have any interest in that. Yeah. I think most people probably know about it from the Angry Video Game Nerd. That style of thing, like I had a fake, this has 99 games on a Game Boy cart, so I know a little bit about that era of gaming. But I feel like to some extent there is like this appeal to people who have only played NES games on emulators, who have only ever experienced those games in a format that is not it's going to work for people who like NES games. But at least for me, even though I have no nostalgia for that era in particular, I do appreciate those games in the perspective that they're shown here. Because like the games in UFO 50 wouldn't look like that, right? There's no CRT filter for this, which I think is interesting, unless there is, and I've missed it. But visually, they look like how those games look like on emulators. Unless you were, unless you had a $8,000 TV in 1993 or whatever, and a SCART connector and everything you need to make it look like that. So it's cool that it appeals in that way to someone like me who didn't grow up with those games, but does have an appreciation for the history of games, especially from that era. Yeah, it's awesome. And I see like a reflection, by the way, we'll get to specific games in a second, I'm sure, but I see a reflection of, again, games that I only know about from the AVGN, if I'm being honest. But, like Dick Tracy, part of that gameplay is in one of these games, the way that you maneuver the car in Onion Delivery and stuff like that. Like every once in a while, I'm like, oh, this game reminds me of a game that I saw a video on YouTube, or I played on an emulator or something.
Onion Delivery might be the one game that I feel like maybe could have come out in the that one. This is like, it's like a top-down GTA. It's not even GTA. I forget what. There were games like this. It's like a top-down city thing. Who's the guy? I've played a bunch of like Retro City Rampage and things like that, I guess, or sort of versions of this direction, as well. Yeah, that was pretty cool. Yeah, what are some favorites people have? That's one for me. Pin Golf was definitely one that
that one's good.
I've enjoyed playing and going back to a bunch. What about you? What about you guys?
I really adore Pilot Quest because it's such a like funny combination. So like it's like half of it is like a cookie clicker or whatever, like an idle game where you're helping aliens restore their. No, you've crash landed on like an alien planet. You're a little pilot, and you talk to all these aliens with like insane names. It's like Plorp and Quarble, whatever. It's all made up terms, but it kind of like illustrates how BS a lot of video game stuff is. It's like, oh, in order to get the Spelunker plopper, you need 6 quarks. To get 6 quarks, you need to plant 4, like Sprite beans, whatever. And it's like, oh, this is BS, but you're buying into it. It's silly. And so what's great is you boot that game up, and as you're playing other UFO 50 games, that game is still technically running. It counts your times and gives you points. And then you can, multiply it, whatever. So the point is you build up like, I forget what it is, if it's like energy or oxygen, but like energy tanks or whatever. And then you exchange them to an alien guard, and he lets you into like the dungeon zone. And like, this is similar to like Pokemon had like a Pokemon Safari area, which is a similar timer thing. And then it turns into basically like Zelda, where there's like 4 dungeons you have to go in, fight the boss, collect ship parts, build, and extract. But if you die in there, you lose all your parts. You have like time, and every time you take damage you lose like 60 seconds. So it's like half of it is this like idle game resource farmer, whatever, and then the other half is this like genuinely cool like extraction top-down Zelda game. So it's like two things in one that I would genuinely play as its own game. Like I thought it's so brilliant, and I would generally like leave my Steam Deck on my bed as I would like go exercise and let it like farm points. But I was like, oh, this is awesome. So Pilot Quest I love, and the music in that. I mean, all the music in this collection is great, but the Pilot Quest loop is like, oh, it's so.
It's
good.
kind of like Earthbound. The music of Pilot Quest reminds me of Earthbound a lot. Or Pilot Quest. I almost said Earthbound. Let's talk about Earthbound. Pilot Quest is fucking great. Idle games just like don't click with me ever, and this is one where I booted it up, and because again, I mean, like, it speaks to the importance of context of these games, the fact that it's part of this collection, the fact that it's like part of this larger experience, the fact that it runs in the background while you're playing other games. At some point, I just ran Pilot Quest for an entire weekend. Like, I just let it run on my computer while I did other stuff, and I would come back and see if like the meters were filled up, and then I would allocate and spend. And I think that the feeling of time that goes by to generate these currencies, and then you buy the meat and go into the zone, it feels like the stakes feel so fucking high when you spend it, because you're like, okay, it took like, this is like hours of my life that are on the line here. And when like a scorpion stings you and you're like, all right, that's like the whole time it took me to make dinner is just like gone. And yeah, I don't know, the stakes really enhance I think if you walk around the entire world of Pilot Quest without a timer, it would feel quite small. But I think it's one of those things where by adding very, very high stakes and pressure onto this thing, it transforms this game that is probably pretty small if you zoom out into this thing that feels way grander than it has any right to.
Yeah.
Jesse?
Good. That's fun.
Any of yours?
Yeah. I really, really enjoyed Warp Tank. Like,
nice.
I was flicking through the rest of the games. I'd only maybe played 24 before we recorded this episode. And Pilot Quest I opened up pretty early on because you guys were mentioning, like, or I think Jeremy, you said, like, if you play it while you're doing other stuff, it'll accumulate the points. I didn't realize Warp Tank was gonna be like 5 hours long, or however long it ended up being. I love that game. It's like I don't know. I don't really know how you describe it. A lot of these games, it's like, I guess I could explain it, but I literally would have to go through the points of the game. It's like a teleporting platformer, maybe like VVV.
Oh, yeah.
Where you flip. You're not flipping gravity. There is one where you flip gravity, which I also thought was cool. But Warp Tank is you just teleport to the nearest flat surface, and your goal is to sort of find the path between all of these different enemies throwing attacks at you, and different obstructions along your path to the exit point. And it's this level-based thing where the level itself, where you, like the overworld, you move in the same way that you would in the actual levels in Warp Tank that you're trying to complete. It has boss fights, which I thought was cool. I think it goes along with this feeling that I had while playing UFO 50 in the chronological order. Although I'm sure it would matter if you had it, or wouldn't matter rather, if you had it on randomized either. But just working your way through the collection, every game has this, like every new game, if you don't know what you're about to get into, has this sense of like, it could be anything, like mechanics wise, but then it could be anything like in terms of scale. Like everything doesn't feel big until you make enough steps into it, and you're like, oh my god, this is huge. What do you mean? Or you get to the end of it, or like one of them is like someone might talk about it. I don't remember the exact name of it. But it's the one that's like a adventure game, like a point and click horror adventure game.
Night Manor.
Nightmare.
Yeah. I remember. It's like
what the hell? It starts and I'm like, oh, okay, maybe it's just this screen and it's a bunch of little things, and then it keeps going. I'm like, how is there's so much game? Yeah. So Warp Tank, my point being, I really like Warp Tank.
that's kind of the miracle of UFO 50 is, I think when I first heard about the conceit of this game, it didn't interest me because I thought it was going to be 50 mini games, and I was like, I would rather just have one real game, and this is 50 real games. Like, that is the thing I must stress about UFO 50 is that you could I put fucking like 10 hours into Rock on Island. I perfected every level except the last one, which I'm convinced that a human man cannot do. I don't know. These are real ass games. I had experiences with these games that are on par with full standalone games. I'm trying to think which one I want to shout out because there's so many that I liked. I Mortal 1 and 2 are both unbelievable. Like sort of thinky platformers where you're sacrificing guys to turn into platforms to blow up blocks. You can use a life basically to like blow things up or make a platform. And that's the first one. And then Mortal 2 is kind of like this big open world, and it doesn't tell you what to do. It just gives you different classifications of guys who can do different, their power is different when they die basically. And again, kind of like Pilot Quest, it's like, it feels very high stakes because you get 99 lives to beat the whole game. And you have no idea how close you are to the end. So you're getting down to like life, there's 30 lives left. And you're like, we gotta start wrapping this up. Like, I don't even know where this at. So it takes, I think the whole game probably takes about maybe an hour at most to beat. But that hour is like, it's stressful. The pressure is on. And I think this speaks to what Danny was saying, is that these are games that feel very retro in many ways, but their design is sort of interesting and challenging. I was thinking about this with when I was playing Astro Bot. I was thinking a lot about holy shit, what's the Metroidvania 3D platformer, the movement game with the bunny girl with the big ass?
Pseudo Regalia.
Pseudo Regalia, thank you.
I didn't know until you said big ass. That's what gave it away.
I knew that. I saved that for last because I knew it was my ace of the sleeve. I was thinking about how like Astro Bot has this sort of like limited openness, but I thought it was really interesting to play Pseudo Regalia and have a 3D retro platformer that's just kind of like this big open world. And I think Mortal 1 is like these linear levels that feels more like an NES game. Mortal 2 just being this big world and just letting you loose in it feels like a very challenging sort of modern design sensibility take on this genre. I think that's a really good example of kind of the merging of old and new.
I loved, was it Bushido Ball?
Yes.
Ball, I think it was. Good old Windjammers kind of clone. That was good fun. The one I want to play more of is Party House. Is that what it's called?
Party
like
House is
so
problem.
good.
Yeah,
Party House
it's
is
like
inverse Balatro.
It's like a deck builder socialite game where you have to like get cool. You like find friends and get celebrities before the police like close down the party. Kind of, it's such a weird idea. It kind of feels like the type of game that did exist back then, though, where people were just like trying shit. It's like a genre that didn't stick. But I think my favorite I've played so far, and I need to play more of again, though, is Rail Heist.
Oh yeah, it's like an ImSim.
It's a fucking ImSim. It is one. Yeah. It's an ImSim and an extraction shooter.
Yeah.
Because obviously, once you get the money, you're like horse turns up, and you have to get out of the. It's kind of like Deathloop. You have to like get in, sneak past everyone, do the thing, and then you have to get out. But it's 2D, and they keep like subverting with different things you're actually able to do within the levels that you don't realize. Yeah, that's Rail Heist Super. That might be my favorite so far.
Party House I feel like deserves special mention. This is, like Danny said, a deck builder about making the ultimate party. And it's so fun. And it's interesting, like, related to the Balatro discussion earlier, it kind of has the inverse relationship to randomness, because all of the benefits are purely controlled, where like there's no opening packs and having randomness about what you get. All of the benefits that you can accrue are things that you buy with currency that you earn, basically. But the randomness is what cuts against you. And so within certain limits, you basically don't know who's coming through the door next. You don't know if they're going to like get the cops to come. You don't know if they're, causing trouble. Maybe there's someone who brings a guest and the party overflows. It's just this bizarre deck builder about making an awesome party, which is also just, like you said, it's like, that's a funny theme for a video game. That's not like a theme you would expect in a video game. But it's deceptively complex. And there's also a kind of like an endless mode where it just generates like a 7-digit seed for you. And I think to cherry Party House, you have to do like 5 random scenarios in a row and complete them or something.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which is very, very, very challenging.
Man. UFO 50. Good stuff. What is it? Games of the year? What do we call this thing? What's the award?
Yeah, it's like most games, but that's like,
that's so easy.
It's betraying the quality somewhat. Yeah.
It's also extremely ambitious. Like, again, I think of this, I mentioned every time it comes up, but like the fact that it exists is an achievement. Like, I mean, I think Danny or someone just said it recently, but like the fact that any game exists is a miracle. But like the fact that like they pulled this thing off and it works. And Jeremy spoke to that element too of just like, oh yeah, they could have just made like a simple concept, put it in, but like every game is really refined of like, oh, I get the point of this. You pick it up quickly, but it really is remarkable. Just the fact that it exists and they pulled off this insane experiment. Like that whenever they probably start working this 8 to 10 years ago or thought of it, it's like, how did they do this? And then the other thing too, on the theme of like Mossmouth and all these developers is like, the most fun of UFO 50 is the joy of discovery. Like, what the hell is this game going to be? You read it one way, and then you read like the 2024 design of it is like, oh my god, it really is like, it's cerebral but not intimidating. Like, it's exciting to just keep picking through the games and discovering it. But I know those are all kind of themes that stick out.
I have a thought. What about
Go for it.
Like making history, because it's an artificial history, but also this game is like historically an achievement in its own right, or like going down in history because they're delving into history to make it, something like that.
Yeah.
What about quality and quantity?
That is accurate.
Any other ones? Before we pass on to the next one, what we'll do as well is we'll have a little look back at last year's to get the creative juices flowing, so we can.
It's a good idea.
We can start to figure out what we were doing before.
Yeah, I got
Yeah, I was trying to think of a pun on a history of violence, but silence is the only thing that really rhymes with the violence.
Mom spaghetti.
Yeah.
All right, let's step forward 1 week further into what was a banger September in 2024. And play a game that I think pretty much everyone who played it immediately, at least on this podcast, vibed with it. Mouthwashing came out in September 26th from developer Wrong Organ. A first-person narrative thing. I don't know what to call this. I don't know what to call it. Who wants to pick up the baton for Mouthwashing?
I'm happy to do it, but I just did UFO 50 if someone else wants to.
I mean,
Go for it again.
Yeah, okay. I'd rather you talk about it. I feel like you've got the bones going in you, rattling around.
Mouthwashing is. I'll try not to retread on what we talked about last time and just kind of.
And we can go into spoilers on this. Let's just say that outright as well.
Especially because this game is 2 hours
codes.
Long.
Yeah, there's time codes on the video. You can see if there's a game we're going to spoil. Nothing's come up yet that's going to really spoil you, but this is probably one that's going to get spoiled.
Yeah, for sure. This game delves into dark themes in a way that I think is incredibly mature and like interesting and thoughtful and nuanced. It is a game that talks about addiction, and then it doesn't go, like, let me bring up a parallel. There was, what's that Mads Mikkelsen movie? It's Another Round.
Another Round, it's called in the US. Yeah, I think it's just called Drunk in
I think it's like Drukt.
Yeah. In Danish or whatever. It's
So I will not spoil
Swedish?
Another Round. But it is a movie about alcoholism and alcohol and like a human relationship to alcohol that doesn't then go, and that's why you should never drink, and that's why alcoholism is bad. Because like, if you want to handle a complex theme, you should not do it in a way where you're trying to be didactic or where you're preaching or where you're talking down to people. The way you should handle it is like, explore it with nuance and with empathy towards different sides of a perspective. I once heard someone say that a good screenwriter, when they're developing a story, doesn't think of the story beginning, middle, and end. They think of they think of a philosophical core theme, and then they think of all the different perspectives on it, and each one of those perspectives generates a different character. And that what different characters do in fiction is often bring different perspectives to the core theme, and that's how you create like the narrative charge is like, the antagonist and protagonist aren't just good guy and bad guy. They're opposing perspectives on the core theme of the work. And I think Mouthwashing is a work that often contains multiple perspectives within single characters, which I think is interesting. So, oh my God, I forget all the characters' names except Anya. Who's the drunk guy?
Swansea.
Thank you. That's also an uncommon name. Swansea's monologue about alcoholism and about addiction and about how like, he got clean for his family and like, this is what you're supposed to do. This is what a man is supposed to do, like rise up above these forces. And then he's like, you know what? The best moments in my life were like, lying drunk face down on the floor with a fist full of broken glass, bleeding and like dehydrated and feeling like shit. Like that was the best moment of my life. And that's a really challenging thing to say in a work of fiction that is dealing with addiction is that
that's the line that stuck with me for like still. That's the one that like really hit home, I think, in an uncomfortable way.
Totally, because it's, you know, like I think we all have moments in our lives that are like maybe not the most stable or best or whatever. Like, it's kind of like when you're really fucking depressed sometimes, like being depressed feels like shit. And I have struggled with depression, but there are times when you're depressed and you're like, now I've got like, there's no stakes, like I'm free. And there's like a freedom in like, in degeneracy and lowness and struggle that I think is like a thing that people don't talk about because it's uncomfortable, because it sounds like you're advocating for being depressed or being an alcoholic or being an addict or whatever. And I think Mouthwashing explores themes like addiction in a way that is like, it's empathetic to the fact that, you know, when you're in the grips of addiction, you're not constantly just like, and I'm doing the wrong thing and it's bad. You're like, and I like, you keep doing it for a reason. And it's not purely just chemical. And it's not that we're automatons who, you know, can't take the bottle out of our hands. There is something there that is like, you know, not worthy of pursuing. Again, I'm trying to speak on this to do justice to the nuance of these themes, but
yeah, it's like, it reminds me of like so many, especially movies are so fast that you need to sort of resolve, and the hero's journey requires you to resolve something that is a challenge or something bad. And so much media that is about addiction is always about not becoming addicted, whereas the reality of being an addict is that you are always an addict. Like even if you get to a stage where you are not, you know, actively, you know, you have it under control in some way, like chances are the majority of your life was not that, it was the spiral that you're in. But we don't talk about that part of it at all. And we also, sometimes they simplify, you know, anyone, especially anyone who's had like addictive issues or has somebody in their family who has like addiction with like actual fucking hard drugs, which is a whole other level of addict, I think anyway, personally, to other types of addiction. Although, you know, I'm sure gambling is probably something that's equally as destructive or somewhat destructive in a similar way. But yeah, whereas I enjoyed that it was like playing in the space that we don't tend to play in, because there is sort of the Surgeon's General warning that we need to get across, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because it can come off as like reckless or something. Like I think as you were writing that monologue, if I was writing that monologue, I could instantly feel as the writer the friction, the instant like predicted friction of people being like, oh, so what, you think we should just go like, you think every, you know, like father of 2 children should just like leave home and get drunk and like that's the best? It's like, no, it's just exploring a complex reality. And I think that's what oftentimes for me good fiction does. The other sort of, I mean, there's like a million dark themes in this that are explored well. Taking responsibility is sort of the overarching theme of this, but the subtlety with which that is it plays out in the relationship between Jimmy and Anya. This is a game about sexual assault that never says the word sexual assault, and I think the way that it deals with that theme by alluding to it with Anya just saying like, why don't we have locks on the doors? Like that line to me that's like the essence of good writing to me, because it is clockable if you feel your way into empathy for that character and try to understand where they're coming from, but it is undetectable if you aren't sort of like engaging with the story and with these characters on an emotional level. Because that's kind of how people talk about difficult things in real life, is they don't just say like, this horrible thing happened to me, let me tell you all about it, unless you're their therapist, in which case, I don't know, maybe that's a different video game. But I feel like the way people talk about horrible shit that happens to them is like, it leaks out in moments of like they need to be vulnerable because they need to talk to someone about this thing. And I think that the way it speaks to the power dynamic of like the captain is friends with Jimmy, so he would take his side. And it's like, you know, I mean, this came up a lot with, was it like Brock Turner or something? The very public case about sexual assault. And there was sort of like all the discussions about like, this is like a young man, like on the rise in like academia. And he's like, has a whole life ahead of him. And like, and I knew him and he was a good guy. And like, I'm not trying to tie this too much to like real events, but I do think that this is dealing with a theme that, you know, we often see evil play out in the public eye in a way that is so fucking banal.
In a way, the sort of banality of evil conversation is been thrust into the mainstream this this week with this assassination on the. I mean, it's a very complex. It's also like a sort of. It touches on other themes that are in Mouthwashing as well, with regard to corporate responsibility and X and Y and Z. But in a way, like I feel like that story is a very is sort of a sign of our times in many way. But yeah, it reflects a similar thing where it's like, wow, yeah, a handsome guy who's eating in my fucking McDonald's is the dude who, you know, who's got a picture on his dating profile or whatever of him with a 6-pack outside Machu Picchu, is the guy who fucking iced this dude in the morning, you know, with a fucking 3D printed gun. It's like it's not like he doesn't, I don't know, maybe he is a psychopath, but he's enough not a psychopath to make you feel really fucking uncomfortable, you know? And I think that's one of the things I liked about Mouthwashing was, you know, and it's one of the more sort of overt themes maybe is the, like the bad guy is in some ways a sense of perspective. And I think as a society at the moment, and I'm sure by the time this podcast comes out, maybe it'll have swapped in a different way, but the which way is up and which way is down with evil on this particular case is very complicated with regard to the assassination thing that just happened, because there are people who will say the opposite, you know what I mean? Or make justifications for one way or another. And it's a conversation that is so uncomfortable that we tend not to have it. And it's another conversation that this game sort of forces you to reckon with a little bit.
Yeah, I was thinking with the CEO killer dude, I was thinking about, I'm not about to make a comparison between this dude and a historical figure. Right. This is a parallel discussion about morality and ambiguity. I was thinking about John Brown, I believe the first person in the United States put to death for treason. He basically tried to lead a slave rebellion. Him and I believe his sons and some people, they did like a raid on Harper's Ferry, like federal armory.
Oh, crazy.
And we're like, we'll steal a bunch of guns and we'll give them to all the slaves. And then me and all the slaves will like fight our way to freedom. And kind of like a lot of the slaves who he tried to rouse to arms were kind of like, I don't know, dude. It's like you and me against the whole fucking Southern army. And basically the John Brown's rebellion did not go the way he planned. And he was sentenced to die, and kind of is a historical figure because he was, you know, someone who saw bad things happening and was like, this is fucking evil. Like, this is against everything I stand for. It's against what this country stands for. And I'm going to like do something radical to stop it. And it is interesting how even people who were, you know, sympathetic to his cause as abolitionists were like, is that too far? Okay. Are you allowed as an individual to make the decision to, you know, put people to death, even if the moral case against those people is very clear? And are
we as a society then allowed to make the decision to put that person to death?
Yeah. It's just an endless series of who gets to decide. And, you know, and I mean, oftentimes the people who make these decisions it's not like, whatever, like it's not like they're some guy who was like on methamphetamine and like stumbled out of the gutter with a knife. Like John Brown's address that he gave when he was sentenced to die is regarded by I can't remember, it was like Emerson or someone, like a bunch of like luminaries of the time were present at his trial.
Oh,
and
wow.
They said that like the two greatest speeches in American history were like the Gettysburg Address and John Brown's death speech. Like he was an eloquent, educated man who knew what he was doing. And so, yeah, it is interesting how morality is oftentimes sort of just a projection of where you draw the line and stuff. And I think what Mouthwashing does brilliantly is it obfuscates the perspective of who is doing certain things in the game. And it draws you into this perspective of like inherent empathy as like, well, I'm playing this character. They wouldn't make me the guy who does bad stuff. And then slowly the game is like, no, you're the worst dude in the whole game is basically the fucking point of it.
I think to that point, one of the things that stood out to me the most about Mouthwashing outside of the narrative stuff, which I think you've explained perfectly, is also the way that it makes the player complicit in your actions, but also the way it frames very simple mechanical thing. Like there's a moment where you cut a cake and it is the most uncomfortable at that point, one of the most uncomfortable, gross things you do, because the way the camera zooms in, the like amount of times you have to cut what looks like a very wet cake, which is maybe more than anyone has ever had to cut a wet cake before. And the way that they wrap those actions back around to sort of put the player in this spot where the discomfort and like actual regular things that you would do in this game, simple interactions become this deeply uncomfortable thing that almost like tuned you into the sort of like mode that you're supposed to be in to appreciate what the narrative's doing at times, the subtle ways it does it, and the not so subtle ways that it like literally flashes text on the screen in your face to remind you of what's going on. I think actually one of the parts that made me go like, what the hell, that I don't know if they ever like built on or did anything with, and I had to sort of consider what it was. There's a part where I think you're playing as Jimmy, and he starts listing off all the ways he's going to save the ship. He's going to bring everyone on the Pony Express back. And those moments, those realizations of things he has to do pop up as like objective markers, like little next objective, find the wrench, next objective, open this. Like that moment really stood out to me of like, oh, is this doing that Spec Ops thing where it's like criticizing the player for being the monster, where it's almost like, or is that how he sees it? I think it's cool that we could perceive so many things from this. Like this conversation about mouthwashing is the sort of conversation you don't really hear that often about video games. I think that's a testament to how smart the both of you are when it comes to talking about this sort of stuff. But also like how many games give you that jumping off point, right? It's not a common thing to hear in this environment of art, but also we tend to find those games, which is really cool. So I don't know. I think Mouthwashing does a lot of really interesting stuff visually as well.
It's
in the
super
way that
cinematic.
it tells its story. Yeah, like super symbolic in its visuals, but also just like the cinematography, that Swansea scene of projecting him remembering his life, watching it flash before his eyes. Shown, there's another game we're going to talk about that does something very similar. 1,000 Times Resist, when we get there next week, that'll be cool to talk about. But just that sort of moment and seeing that the way that it's portrayed is, there's so many things like that throughout Mouthwashing that,
yeah,
I don't know, beautiful,
super cinematic, gorgeous looking. They do a good job with that sort of like the PS1 style. I think the thing that I enjoyed about it the most, though, is that like for a game that is attempting to talk about all these lofty things, there is a restraint and economy of storytelling that I really fucking appreciate, because I hate being fucking. Maybe this is the Catholic backlash or whatever, but I hate being fucking pontificated to and battered over the head with a fucking story that's supposed to be all interesting and high and mighty. And this game, probably more than I can't actually think about a game that has sort of made me think about stuff that I don't tend to think about, look inward, especially when it comes to games, but also did it while respecting my fucking time. I think it reminds me of the times where we get the extra bit of time to edit one of our docs down, and you spend like weeks and weeks and weeks editing it, and then you step away for like a week and you come back and you go, oh, I can cut like 20% of this. I don't need any of this shit. You know what I mean? Like it was like they clearly were, it felt like they worked on this and worked on this and worked on this and kept at it and then got it down to exactly the essentials, which I think really lends in its favor, because I think you need to complete this game to really like enjoy the whole thing for it all to sink in.
Yeah,
and
that's
a lesser game I would have jumped off.
That's a really good point about the economy of storytelling. I think like if you want to make a serious game or whatever the fuck that means, like a game that deals with heavy, big, potentially dark themes. It's like I've referenced this a million times on the podcast, but it's like the old Scorsese quote that if you want to say something with a picture, put it in a genre film. Basically, like if you want to make a movie about if you want to make an anti-capitalist movie about how capitalism is evil, make it like a fucking gangster movie, make it like a horror movie, you know, like you gotta. If you want to make a game about the banality of evil and like you put your player in the perspective of this evil person who keeps saying take responsibility but can't do it, make it like snappy, make it non-linear, make it like flashy, give it a good story, like make it an experience that is worth having outside of it being like a thoughtful piece. And I will talk about this with Anthology of the Killer on the next episode, but it's like, yeah, like don't just be smart, be like funny, you know? It's like tell me a dick joke that makes me think about my entire life. You know what I mean?
I can't think of a game that is less of a Frank Howley game. Frank, how did you?
Frank's a cinephile, though. I feel like Frank would like this game.
That's true.
Yeah, I was like, as I was playing it, I was just trying to imagine, like, or imagine if I was just watching this as a movie. Oh, it's fucking awesome. Shifting perspectives. Like every time it cuts chapters, it feels like my Steam Deck was crashing. So like,
I forgot about that. Yeah, the data mosh shit.
Yeah, but yeah, no, like when I first started playing it, I had to be like, okay, I have to pretend it's like reading a graphic novel, because it's not like, but like, that's the point, like where it's like. when I think of like video game, it's like, oh, this is like of the like it's Walking Simulator seems like such a step back of where we're at now with this whole world of video games. It's like everyone is so much more advanced and like it's way beyond the Steam games coming out a decade ago, which I still liked. I like things like Gone Home and stuff like that. But like, I started playing it once. And I was like, this is like an in-bed Steam Deck chill out game. And so then I started like a new file the following day. And then like, at first I was like, is this a horror game? What is going on here? And then it kind of reminded me of like, Swansea kind of reminded me very much of like Stanley Kubrick stuff and like Gomer Pyle with people losing their minds. Like, the one element I really loved and remember is when like the axe is lodged in like the giant windows or the giant screen, and you have to pull it out, and it's like, oh, this is so cool, and like it was very surreal. The element that sticks out to me is like when the game like first really shifts, you're going down like a like steps, and then you just drop infinitely, and then you're at the bottom, and it turns into like Evangelion for a second, where you're in this red pool and these flashing warning signs, and I was like, oh, okay, I get why people are talking about this game now, and then it keeps going and going and shifts, but it was like, again, there's I don't want to say there's no action, but like, there's no like combat or anything like that. It is purely storytelling stuff, but like, the aesthetic of it was very interesting and cool. And like, I feel like there's one part where like it's inferred the guy has like a horse fetish or something. Like there's something where it's like he's into like the cartoon animals, or there's something that, and it's like, is that why God? I don't know. It'll dangle these quick things, and it's like, wait, what? And then it just keeps going, and you can unpack the lots of characters. So it's like there is a lot of density here. I feel like I didn't give it the proper time to like really. I didn't play it when it came out because I was so busy with other stuff, but like, hearing you guys talk about it now, I'm like, okay. Like, so I don't know. It just didn't, maybe it just wasn't the right time and place when I played it. But like graphically, aesthetically, like I'm so excited to see what this team makes in the future. Cause it's like, oh yeah, I'm now officially, it's like when you watch a great film from a first time filmmaker or whatever, it's like, oh my God, whoa. So, definitely like, definitely passes like, oh, this is very cool. But, I don't think I was just like in the zone for it, but it's cool.
This one's gonna be a hard one to name.
I have one more philosophy thought before we move on to naming. This did not occur to me until this conversation, so this is off the dome. Not only is this a banality of evil game, I feel like this is a banality of taking responsibility game, the inverse of the banality of evil. That like oftentimes Jimmy is so obsessed with like, I could save us all, I could do the right thing, I could fix this, but like, he's trying to do it in this way that relies on grand gestures. And oftentimes doing the right thing isn't a matter of, like it's the reason that the CEO killer thing, to tie it back, that a lot of people are like, this is like a moment of justice. This is like a turning point. This is revolutionary, which, I'm not saying it's not, I'm not saying it is, but like, I think it's oftentimes because the things that will actually change the material conditions of your life are not the coming of the revolution, which may be this thing that unfolds over 100 years. It's like doing all your fucking dishes and like calling your family and like, sweeping up around the house and stuff. And I think that Jimmy is so incapable of taking responsibility in a way where he would just say like, I did something fucking horrible. And it's the kind of the sexual assault thing is kind of the unspoken hidden layer of the story. Taking responsibility would be admitting to everyone what he did and kind of owning it up to it. And then, getting back safely to civilization and taking responsibility for it.
No, yeah.
And he does the opposite, where he keeps saying, I'll take responsibility through this like grand fucking gesture to fix it. And it's like,
I read it as it, and he'd done something so bad that he needed to do something even greater in the inverse to like cleanse himself or something.
For sure.
But was willing to let it get right down to the line to the point where it was just like, oh no, you've dug the hole so deep now that you can't sort of do the grand gesture. It'll never be enough.
Yeah, exactly. And like oftentimes the grand gesture isn't even the way to address it. The way to address it is just to take responsibility in the most banal way possible and to just deal with the consequences of your actions in a way that is not cinematic and not grand and probably will be very slow and painful and traumatic.
Oh, the grand gesture is entirely like egotistical and self-centered and narcissistic. It's like, it's sort of the... That's why it's so maddening, sort of watching it all happen. Yeah, because unless you're a narcissist, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, so it's a banality of evil game, but it's also a banality of doing the right thing game.
The banality of doing the right thing award.
Poor Spike.
It doesn't sound like we're praising the game. Horseplay.
Nice.
That's funny.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Oh, this is a tough one to name, dude. the Hannah Arendt official. No, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. This is a real. Just go for best.
Yeah, we might just
writing
need to
or
review the
something like
last set and get some ideas.
Yeah, because if you do a silly one for mouthwashing, it's
That's
like fucked up. But if you do a really serious one, it's like boring.
Okay, let's have a little gander, shall we?
Yeah.
2 years past to the NOCLIP Game of the Year 2023, which was last year. Would you believe? The awards that we gave were, I'll read them in order of whatever this document has. Slayers X got the Zane Lofton Lifetime Achievement Award. Which is quite good. We'll see. This is also a good, review, I guess, of how well we did. Final Fantasy 16 got Best AMV. Resident Evil 4 Remake got Master of Remaking, capital RE. Typecast got Stroke of Genius Award. Very good. Homebody, Closest to Home Award. Blasphemous 2 got the Catholic Guilty Pleasure. I think we originally did Catholic Guilt Trip, but then somebody emailed in to fix that one for us. Bomb Rush Cyberpunk got Best Dreamcast Game, and then sort of like a cat eyes emoji thing with the thumbs up. Dave the Diver got Hidden Depth Award. Baldur's Gate 3 got Most Immersive Sim. Midnight Suns got Marvel vs. XCOM Award. And Alan Wake 2 got Boldest Flavor. Coffee reference there, I assume. So some of them are a little bit on the nose. Some of them are a bit more, punny, let's say. Zane Lofton Lifetime Achievement Award. It's a pretty good one there. Best AMV. Balatro at the moment, we have My Dad Went Out for a Pack of Balatro and Never Came Home Award. I'm happy to lock that one in.
That's good.
I think
I
that's
kind of
fucking
like
great.
that one.
That's very funny.
Okay, let's let's get that one in. Gonna have to capitalize all these for it to be the award. Okay, so we've got Balatro locked in, which is great. So then we've got Astro Bot, UFO 50, and Mouthwashing. I have a feeling Mouthwashing is going to be the hardest. I think this is an order of difficulty, honestly. Astro Bot right now we have like joy, platforming, homage, fun, throwback joy, amusement park, pure joy. Ooh. And now 10 minutes of silence.
Yeah, if you're listening to the podcast, this is the part every year where there's long, serious silences while we all contemplate.
Random
It's
little
part of the
sighs,
process.
like,
And then someone throws in an idea where they're like, well, it can't be this. And we're all like, yeah, no, it definitely can't be. So why'd you say that?
yeah. And then Danny
Then it
says no
negates,
bad ideas in brainstorming, and we go from there.
Let's try something a little bit different today.
Okay.
Let's just open up all three of them. Let's just play in the space, because some of you guys might be dead, a bit writer's block on one, but maybe not another one.
True.
So UFO 50, at the moment we have like making history, going down in history, quality and quantity award, most game of the year, and then Mouthwashing at the moment I've got horseplay and best writing / story down. We've got
I've got a thought on mouthwashing, actually, surprisingly.
Okay.
What's the does anyone remember the slogan on the mouthwash? Or they have a slogan for the mouthwash about, like, don't they? I was thinking like it's like the Burn Yourself Clean award or something.
Ooh.
Like it's like, because mouthwashing, like burn, like the name itself is mouthwashing is not only a reference to the plot conceit of them carrying a fucking truckload of mouthwash. It's also that mouthwash is something that like burns as it cleanses.
Right.
And so like the cleansing power of pain, and that pain is like a necessary ingredient of
I like
being
too that
cleansed.
it's ineffective. Like, obviously mouthwash has some benefit, but people typically use it wrong and it doesn't actually do anything for you, but it feels like it does something because it hurts.
Yes, that's a good point. Yeah.
Pain is something, or like pain or suffering or something is like some
The
ingredient.
tastes awful, but it works award. But it doesn't work. No.
But it doesn't. What did you say? Cleansing? What would you?
I said like burn yourself clean, which is an LCD sound system reference accidentally.
Dance yourself clean could be.
Yeah, exactly.
Burn yourself clean award.
Something like that.
I'm gonna put down something like I like the Kubrick reference. It is very Kubrick.
Yeah, like the Kubrick Stare Award, but something better.
Even that World War One movie,
Stanley Parable.
Stanley. I was thinking, like,
Stanley Parable.
there's that
Sorry,
one World War One Kubrick movie. Like, I think it's called is it Paths of Glory, where that is about the banality of evil, where it's about like the generals, like, oh, how much should we keep bombing the trenches? Where it's like it's not talking to the soldiers. But there's also this thing about like the court. What I like about Mouthwashing is like you'll see this in a lot of like even like I don't know like Outer Worlds does this. Is like just the corporate parodies, all the corporate satire of Mouthwashing, like the horse that constantly speaks and the robot's breaking down that's saying like, we love you, a good employee. Like there's something about like the corporate stuff I love. So maybe even leaning into the corporate but PlayStation's also very corpo, but there's something about the corporate
it'd be
satire
funny to
of Mouthwashing.
criticize, to make an award for one game. Man, corporations fucking suck. And then the other one's be like, dude, I love brands.
Astro Bot gets the corporation's rule award.
Baby.
Yeah,
And
like
this gets the
Astrobot.
corporation's suck award.
Yeah, Astro Bot would be
that's
like
great.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Astro Bot would be like the brand loyalty award, and then Mouthwashing would be like the corporation. Yes, the corporations are evil, or I don't know. The shoot CEO award.
I do kind of like the pairing
Yeah.
of the corporations or corporation. What would you say? Corporation Loyalty Award.
Yeah, I like brand loyalty award because it
Brand
really is
loyalty
that
of
where
the
it's
month.
like because I've been what's the term that they talk about like Coca-Cola marketing, but it's like crib marketing or whatever it is, but it's like from the day you're born, you shove Coke in front of them and you'll be for life. I forget what they call it, but it's like that. I had a PlayStation since I was 8 years old, so I'm like, oh my god, yeah, I remember Gran Turismo, whatever, all this crap. But it's like it pays off. Yeah.
The only thing I don't necessarily like about it is that it is slightly not celebrating what's great about the game. But but also like
It kind of is. It sounds like that's a big part of what you like about Astro Bot is that it's got all these references to all these great games. And you talked about the bots and the gotcha thing and how that gives you more interactables with all the different bots. You seem to really appreciate that part of it.
I think to me it's not like the core reason the game works or anything.
Yeah.
Like I think what I was saying was that like that could have been this sort of like silly artifice that they put on the front of it, but what was really cool was that they put all this effort into not only sort of making the references, the PlayStation stuff fit inside of this sort of not boring template that they made, but also they had layers to it. Like I think what Frank was saying about like it wasn't just like, oh, you got like this little like Jill Valentine thing. It was the fact that you also got like the little area that she goes in, and then also that when you hit it, it did an animation. It was just, I think what I was impressed with was that not that it had all this shit in it, but like that they actually sort of justified it by making it really good by adding all of this like, you know, extra. It's just so extra, the whole fucking thing.
Yeah,
that's a really good point.
So like if there was none of that PlayStation shit in it, I would have. I don't know. It's hard to say if I would have enjoyed it as much or little, but like that's not the reason I was excited to play it, to like see who the next ones I got were necessarily. It was more what the level is and stuff like that.
Yeah. I think the dual award conceit is funny, but I think it does do a disservice to both games. I kind of for Mouthwashing like burns as it cleans.
Ooh, that's good. Yeah, because it's kind of like, you know, reflect. It's deep, man. It's kind of like
thanks, dude. I contain multitudes.
Thanks. Yeah, it's awesome. You should get that tattooed on your face.
My soul is kind of like twisted, you know. Like that's kind of like
burns it. Yeah, it does a good job of explaining the, I guess, you know, how do I say this? Uncomfortable nature of the game, maybe.
Yeah, because it's a game. It's a game that's like by all accounts should be a depression fest, and you're like, why would I play this? But there's something so like rewarding and cathartic about it. Yeah. Burns as it cleans, I think it's also a mouthwashing joke. So
yeah, that's.
I also looked up the definition of like, is it? I never know how to pronounce it, but acerbic, where it's like the definition is like sharp and forthright, but also tasting sour or bitter. But that's kind of that, where it's like, yeah, the game is like, oh, this is like it's like you're being ripped as you're playing it. But I was like, oh, that was kind of cool. That was really cool. You know, again, like David Lynch or whatever. But like, yeah, so I like burn. Yeah, having burn in the title.
How do you guys feel about that? Burns as it cleans award.
Sounds good to me. I like it.
All right, let's lock it in. Yeah, that seems also maybe appropriate that you name it, Jeremy. I feel like you're the one who's most tuned into this this particular video game. Burns the Clean Award. I got 2 out of 4 done, guys. So Astro Bot and UFO 50. UFO 50. We have any? We're all staying away from UFO 50. It looks like. So
it's a really tough one because it's such a like. Yeah, what's special about UFO 50 is what we need to get to the bottom of here. It's like the Derek Yu Impossible Dream to Dream the Impossible Dream Award. Like it's like it's like this grand achievement that is ridiculous that they pulled it off. It's also like has no right to have this many games in it. It's a celebration of the past, but with a taste of the future. Something about the past and the future.
Ooh, like Back to the Future? Should we give it the Back to the Future award?
Back to the Future award.
I know how much you like Back to the Future.
Oh my god.
It is Almanac award.
It is funny how like with Astro Bot is celebrating like 30 years of like actual games. UFO 50 is celebrating a completely made up like again making history award, but it's like where it's like it's celebrating a complete fabricated
making
console's
history
lifespan.
Award is actually good though because you're making like it's a false history.
Yeah,
I don't mind that.
And it is an achievement in the indie game space too. Like it truly is like, oh my god. But yeah, there's something about the celebration of game. Like again, I know Astro Bot's the same thing, but there's something so much like bolder and more innovative with the UFO 50 of just like, oh my god, they did that without like they had to build the foundation and then celebrate it to like it's a tower of achievement. And there's something.
What about the Deja New award?
That's so bad. I think I like it.
I know it loops back around
it's like
to being
Cheesecake
good.
Factory. Like,
is it new NEW or NEU?
Oh, that's a good question. It could go either way.
Put an umlaut on it too. Why not?
That sucks so much that I like it.
Yeah. The Deja New award. God.
It doesn't. It's not quite celebratory enough, but it's funny.
It seems like one that we might do for this episode in 2 episodes time.
Yeah.
Change it, maybe. Who knows? Deja New. That's pretty good. It's pretty bad, which is why it's pretty good. Yeah. What do you think, Jesse? You umlaut. Is that what you think?
If we're being silly, might as well go all the way on it.
Exactly. Might as well be hung for a sheep as a lamb. Here we go. You umlaut. I'm pasting this from Google. There we go. Deja. Yeah, it definitely looks way worse. That's awesome. Good job. Yeah. All right, fuck it. Deja New award. That's it. All that's left is Astro. Joy, platforming, homage, fun, amusement park, pure joy, corporate brand loyalty award.
Employee of the Month award would be so fucked up, but it's pretty funny. No, that's not celebratory enough of this game.
It's like remember when games were good. That's what people kept saying, which is very like stupid and reductive, but like it is also there's an element of a nugget of truth to even the most ridiculous of claims, I guess. Throwback joy, I think, is why I have that one in there.
I was just thinking of something of like, there's something about remembering the console wars where it's like the console war winner, where it's like the only game that's still kind of like, hey guys, let's plant a flag here.
Yeah, last veteran of the console war.
It's like that. It really, it's like, yeah, because I don't know.
Who's that guy? Who's the Japanese soldier who didn't believe World War II ended?
Yeah, the guy in the Werner Herzog book. It's a good book, by the way. It's Enjoyed
a game that doesn't know the console wars ended. The console wars never ended. Wait,
yeah, the console war never ended. The Hiro Onada Award. I feel like no one will get the reference, so that's a bad one. But it's pretty funny to imagine.
He was also. Wait, was he Korean or was he? I read the fucking book and I can't remember. This is
Hiro Onoda.
I think he was Japanese.
Japanese second lieutenant in the Imperial Japanese Army. One of the last Japanese holdouts. He continued fighting for decades after the war's end in 1945. For 30 years.
It wasn't until they had they suited up his old commanding officer to come out and relieve him. It was the only time he didn't believe anyone.
Phil Spencer's going to have to do that for Frank in like 20 years.
That's why I got confused, because at one stage he saw planes flying overhead and he thought it was the next wave, but it was the Korean War was happening. Oh, madness. Okay, that's...
So that's a deep cut reference for this. I feel like if you worked on Astro Bot,
figure out if it's racist. That's what my
because they're a Japanese game developer.
Yes,
I was just about to say, if you worked on Astro Bot, you saw this, you'd be like, A, what the fuck? B, what the fuck?
Yeah, might not. But it's a very deep cut for a console war.
Yeah.
Corpo war.
The game's good also.
Yeah. That's in parentheses after the award name.
That's it. The problem I'm having is that it's hard to pin down. The game is good on such like a fundamental like level that I can't. It's not like it's doing one thing particularly nuanced. It's just it's such a great pure game. Like it does all the things. It makes the smile happen. I don't. Fuck.
It makes the smile happen.
Makes the smile happen.
Just call it. It makes the smile happen.
No, because that also sounds like I'm doing something racist.
Yeah, it does sound like it would be a bad translation.
Makes
on
the smile happen.
Japanese
It's like
snack
written
product.
on a exactly. It's written on a fucking loaf of bread or something. Makes
we
the smile.
did almost see that exact phrase on a loaf of bread.
What was it? Bread for making the better feeling or something?
It was bread for making the everyday happy
better
or something.
or happy, yeah, something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, so we can't. Yeah, fuck.
Okay, you're right.
Just latently racist. We can't fucking. Jesus. Astro Bot. Fucking. The fucking Good Game Award.
I'll buy you guys time I was laying in bed. I was thinking about titles last night, and I was like, if you were going to give Astro Bot a derogatory award, you would give it the Astro Butt Award, and ass has two S's. It's not funny.
Astro
I just
Butt.
had to,
No,
as
it's
I was thinking that while I was falling asleep last night. I was like, that's pretty stupid.
You could say Poo Ward instead of Award.
Oh, damn. Fucking, whoa, chill, man.
Ass Ward. Astro.
It's also the only platform exclusive game, like
yeah.
console. That's why I keep thinking like console wars, but it's like
Loyalist soldier in the, no.
Yeah.
I love that we just did we did 15 minutes of the game is good, it's okay, the brand stuff's fine. If we're coming up with the award name, and all anyone has is man, it sure does have brands.
It's just hard to.
It's just hard to
pin down the game.
I just want to give it good game.
Good game award.
That sucks.
I think I'm starting to go towards the Good Game Award.
Yeah, it's like good fundamentals or something. Like they say in basketball.
Fundamentals.
Fundamentals.
Oh, whoa, there you go. I think you might have found
Mental.
it.
Fun.
Okay.
It's so fun it makes me mental.
How about
Good
brandamental? How about
Now you're doing it.
Yeah, I know.
Brandalism.
Brandalism.
I was thinking of like fundamentalism, but there's like brandalism.
Whoa.
The Russell Brand International Branding
Oh my God.
Award.
Russell Brand don't vaccinate.
Russell Brand anti-vaxxer.
Jesus didn't vaccinate.
Yeah, what's it's just fun and fundamentals. I feel
Just
like
a good old fashioned good game.
Give it the they don't make them like they used to award.
that's not bad.
Oh, that is good actually.
It would have to be the I guess they do make them like they used to award or something, you know?
they make them like they used to.
They make them like they used
That's
to.
something about yeah. They made
Making
them. They made one like
They made one like they used to.
yeah. They made one like they used to.
I love that's perfect. I like the phrasing of that because it's like
made way.
it's like someone admitting defeat where you're like, I guess they do make them like they used to.
Guys,
Yeah,
you're
they
never gonna guess. But they did it. They did what? They made one like they used to.
Made one what? What do you mean? You know
Hear
what
the
I mean.
PlayStation 1 sound.
I love it's made one too. Like,
Yeah,
it's like,
only one.
Like, it's
It-
kinda
it's
sad.
it's not like it's not like a generalized like I guess they still do make them. It's like yeah, I guess they made one like they used to.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty fucking good.
Is
like
that a
that.
fair? Is that a fair?
Yeah.
As well, are we saying that it is? Because is it like old? In a way, it's not like old platformers, but it gives us the feeling.
Yeah.
Of
Plus,
old
that was Team
platformers, so
Asobi's
that's
whole
enough.
thing of making a game that was an homage to the games that Sony used to put out, but they don't anymore.
There you go.
True.
Double
Yeah,
meaning.
It feels like the joy I had playing Crash Bandicoot on PS1 back in the day, without load times.
We're so back. Dude, but
They
now I
should
can't
be
check my
fabricated load
phone.
times.
What's the point?
Yeah.
Oh man, nice.
I
one.
like this. We've got
Excellent.
the
I think
long
Jesse
award
gets
names.
credit for that, and
Yeah.
then you guys sort of did a little modifier on it.
They made one like they. Yeah, that's great.
I love that so much.
Okay, we have our first 4 awards, gentlemen. Awesome work, crew. Balatro wins the "My dad went out for a pack of Balatro and never came home" award. Astro Bot wins "They made one like they used to" award. UFO has Deja New award.
I look forward to
And
changing that one later.
Mouthwashing. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, exactly. Asterisk. And then Mouthwashing comes home with the Burns as It Cleans award. Those are our first 4 games of 2024. We will be back next week to talk about Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, Anthology of the Killer, and 100 Times Resist.
1,000 times even.
100 gex
Jesus,
resist.
Here's me fucking thinking, I finally got it right.
You said it with so much confidence.
Look at this. I'm going to glance at the screen when I do it. 1,000 times resist. And then for those of you wondering about the next week, we will have Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth, Metaphor, Refantasio, and Indiana Jones and the Great Circle on our final episode. And then after Christmas, we will have our community episode. So make sure you head over to tinyurl.com/noclip GOTY24 and you will get spun out to the Patreon page. You have to be a member. You can be a free member. You don't have to put credit card details in. You literally just have an email address and it'll sign you up. And you'll get pinged whenever we put up documentaries like our Soul Reaver documentary, which went live today at time of recording, or 3-4 days ago by the time you listen to this. Let us know what some of your favorite games of the year were, or if you like other games that are already in the comments, and then like those comments, and it'll help us pin together the 10 or so games, we'll see, that people liked. It's mostly just a way to celebrate some of the games that you played that perhaps we did not. Great job, everyone. Fair play. That was tough going there. 4 is the most we'll have to do on one of these podcasts. Hopefully the next ones will be a little bit easier. Although the games get bigger, I think, the longer this goes along. All right. Any final thoughts, gents, on our second of 4/5 Game of the Year pods? You feeling happy about those?
Yeah, I think we nailed it.
What's your favorite game out of those? How about that?
Ooh.
Each of you pick one.
Oh, that's so
Astro
hard.
Bot.
Okay.
That's mouthwashing for me.
Yeah.
Mouthwashing.
I think so. I'm like 50-50 on mouthwashing, and there's some stuff in UFO 50 that's what gaming's all about.
And I'm stuck between Balatro and Astro Bot. I think Astro. And that might be because I spend a lot of time playing it with my daughter, and she really added to the fun.
Yeah.
I did also want to add before we end this episode, I do think it would be funny to give UFO 50/50 awards. Just
Patreon exclusive episode. We'll rank each one.
I almost thought about pitching doing a top 10 of UFO 50 games within a GOTY within a GOTY. But seems a little.
Yeah, that's a good award name for UFO 50.
What was it? GOTY with a
GOTY's within a GOTY.
Yeah.
GOTYs. Yeah.
There's also
go on, you.
Best games. It's like best games of like 1984.
We had so much trouble finding the one award name for UFO 50. I don't want to be stuck in that hell. All right, let's wrap this one up. We'll be back next week with more games of the year. Until then, bye.
Not the name.